The Prime Minister survives a vote of confidence in his leadership, vowing to move on and deliver for Britain.
Very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 7th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Steve. This is what we've got for you today.
The Prime Minister has vowed to move on and focus on the things people want after surviving a vote of confidence in his leadership that saw 4 in 10 of his own MPs voting to oust him. Speaking after the vote, the PM hailed the result as extremely good and decisive.
In response, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the result was grotesque and said the Conservative Party had ignored the British people by keeping Boris Johnson in power.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Zelensky's used his nightly address to thank the Prime Minister for providing Kyiv with exactly the weapons that it needs. The UK provided the country with long-range missile systems after Russia launched renewed strikes on the capital.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a picture of their daughter Lilibet as they celebrated her first birthday during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Let us know.
Sweet
It's
picture.
adorable, isn't it? Just so sweet. If you're listening on the radio, make sure you have a look online or tune into our app to see that picture and send us your thoughts this morning. Does that soften your view a little bit of the Sussexes seeing their little baby girl? GB News at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News.
And don't forget that if you're watching online, subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube, and that way you'll get all the very latest on the big stories that we're covering today.
So welcome to the programme. Our top story this morning, the Prime Minister has survived a vote of confidence in his leadership.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
So the party voted, as you heard, in favour of the Prime Minister, 211 to 148, but that means 41% of MPs voted against the Prime Minister. The figure means a higher proportion of MPs voted against him than they did against Theresa May in 2018 and Margaret Thatcher in 1990.
Well, in a speech after the vote, a defiant Boris Johnson called the result decisive and vowed to move on and deliver for Britain.
And what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's in Downing Street for us this morning. Look, is this a line that allows the Prime Minister to move forward, or has he been dealt a fatal blow here, Tom?
Well, the tricky thing, Stephen, is that no one is quite sure. This is certainly a victory for the Prime Minister, but a qualified victory. A victory that has seen a significant proportion of his own party say that they do not want him to continue in the job. There'll be a job to do to try and rebuild that trust, to try and unite the party. And yes, technically, within the rules of the 1922 committee, not another vote can take place for another year. However, we know how these rules can be changed. Just a simple majority of the 1922 executive, just 5 out of the 9 individual MPs serving on that committee, could change the rules to host a vote sooner. So the Prime Minister not necessarily as in the clear as he might like to be. Certainly, there does now need to be some sort of unification drive within the Conservative Party. We've been hearing rumours of a potential reshuffle in the next weeks, or maybe the next month or so, potentially one as soon as 3 weeks' time following those by-elections on the 23rd of June. But one of the interesting things about the way in which this vote was conducted was it didn't seem to be all about the dreaded term of Partygate. Looking at how different MPs were describing their anguish over which way to vote yesterday, it seems to be that the way in which the government has been drifting, the lack of clear direction, there were many different issues that different MPs were raising with regard to the Prime Minister's leadership. And so one of the potential lessons from yesterday is that the government needs to find a steadier course, that it needs to have an agenda that is more coherent, that is less pushed about by different interest groups, and that is less beset by U-turns. It seems that many Conservative backbenchers in particular are calling on the government to become, if anything, more conservative, less higher taxing, less regulatory. So that is potentially a direction in which we may see this government going while it searches to shore up the ship, searches for direction. Will it be able to achieve that in just the next few months, or will it be yet again knocked off course by these two by-elections in Wakefield and in Tiverton on the 23rd of June? Well, that remains to be seen.
And Tom, how much can the comparisons be made with Boris Johnson and people like Theresa May and John Major and indeed Maggie Thatcher? You know, he is so different, isn't he? Defies all rules when it comes to these sorts of things that we can't really extrapolate too much from their experiences.
No, not necessarily. Margaret Thatcher won by 55% of the vote back in 1990. However, that wasn't 15% ahead of her next rival, which meant that the vote went to a second round, and in the end, it was the cabinet that tore her down. Now, the difference with Boris Johnson in 2022 is that he was actually 18% ahead of his nearest rival, i.e. those saying no confidence. It's a slightly different system. However, he did win by a larger majority of victory than Margaret Thatcher did in 1990, looking at those raw numbers and indeed percentages. And yet, I think more crucially, looking at how the cabinet has stuck around the Prime Minister over the last 24 hours, that may play a more crucial factor with regard to him staying on. After all, it was the cabinet that one by one went in to knife Margaret Thatcher in the back. It doesn't look like we're going to see a similar situation with Boris Johnson. There's been a level of unity within the cabinet that perhaps has not stretched to the wider parliamentary party. And of course, comparing the situation to that of Theresa May, when there was one defining mission of the Theresa May government that kept being delayed, kept being failed to be delivered. Actually, what brought Theresa May, if you'll forgive me, down 3 months after that vote of confidence in her by the parliamentary party was a national election, the European elections, when the Conservative Party came fifth behind the Brexit Party, behind the Liberal Democrats, behind the Labour Party, behind even the Greens, down on 9% of the vote. The next day, Theresa May resigned as Prime Minister. Very often, it's the electoral events, the judgment of the people, that matters so much more in these circumstances. But yes, Boris Johnson, entirely a different character to those that we have seen come before. Different indeed from Theresa May, from David Cameron, and from John Major, who also faced a leadership challenge back in 1995. This seems to be a different time, and as his predecessor but one, David Cameron, has described Boris Johnson in the past, a greased piglet potentially can squeak out of yet another challenge. What may come along in the next week or months that may well provide another distraction, that may well provide some respite for the Prime Minister, that may well provide another way out? Will he be able to move the conversation on and unite the party? That's certainly a challenge, but we've seen stranger things happen in politics before.
Yeah, haven't we just? Tom, thank you. Let's talk to the Deputy Political Editor of The Express, Sam Lister, who's here in the studio. Morning to you. What do you make of this?
Well, what a night. What I would say is Boris Johnson is the great political Houdini, isn't he? So it is too early to write him off. A lot of his critics say he's a dead man walking, but we have seen that he's a man who is capable of regeneration and reinvention in a way that people like Theresa May, John Major and Margaret Thatcher weren't. They were pretty set in their character and ideology, and that made it very difficult for them to manoeuvre out of these kind of situations. Boris Johnson has repeatedly managed to get out of all kinds of scrapes, as we have seen. And he spoke to the Daily Express last night after the vote. He was pretty bullish. quite upbeat. He thinks that this means he's got a clean slate, that we can now move on. He told our paper that this means it's done and dusted. I think that might be a little bit hopeful, though.
Well, I mean, not least, we've talked a lot about the by-elections. We've also got this inquiry into whether or not, parliamentary inquiry into whether or not he misled Parliament. Those are going to be difficult for him to move the dial away from that conversation that he's so desperate to move on from.
Yeah, and also there is the COVID inquiry looming as well. So there are potential, pitfalls for him over the next year. Even before that, in the next few weeks, if we had a series of resignations, that would be a danger point for him. The two by-elections. Now, there are a few international summits over that period, which he would be expected to go to, which would mean he would be out of the country for quite some time. And that obviously is a dangerous time for him, because that would mean that people could coordinate and try and find some new way to force him out. Now, obviously, under the rules, he's got a year now because he's won this leadership contest, but there are other ways to frustrate him. The rebels can organise to kind of frustrate him, getting his legislation through Parliament. They could organise resignations to destabilise him. So I don't think it's over yet, but I think it's too early to write him off.
But the pressure is on now for him to start to deliver more conservative policies, smaller state, lower taxes. If he really pushes on that, he could win them all back.
Absolutely, and we've got Esther McVey in the paper today writing about how Boris Johnson and his government have essentially turned socialist, according to her, during the COVID pandemic. She says they were spending money left, right and centre, locking people in their homes effectively with the lockdown measures. So certainly the backbenchers are very keen to see tax cuts. They want to see a return to conservative values. And I think that would make a big kind of headway into winning back support. But he's got a massive mountain to climb. There is a long way to go to win back that support. He's got rebels on all different sides of the party against him at the moment.
And Sam, I suppose yesterday, just one day it was all wrapped up in, which in some ways is a good thing for the Conservative Party because it hasn't managed to destroy itself. But those factions have been ripped open just in a matter of however many hours it was from announcement to, it was 12 hours, wasn't it, from when Sir Graham Brady made the announcement and the ballots closed at 8 p.m. How easy will it be to unify the party?
Well, we saw Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary, and Jeremy Hunt, the former Health Secretary, who has been one of the main rebels in this leadership putsch. And he really, they had a very unedifying spat. Nadine Dorries went on Twitter to tear into Jeremy Hunt's record as a health secretary. He was the longest serving health secretary in British history. She really tore into his record. She said that he was making this all about him, really, that he wants to be the next leader, and it was all got very personal and nasty.
I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, that's a big issue against someone like Jeremy Hunt, isn't it? He can push against the Prime Minister all he wants on whatever position he takes, but ultimately he's doing it because he wants the job.
Yeah.
Which doesn't paint him in a particularly good light.
No, it doesn't. And also, realistically, is Jeremy Hunt the man to unify the party? I don't see him winning over the support of the Brexiteers, and I don't see him as a viable prospect in retaining the Red Wall. So I think in terms of future leadership hopes, I don't see him particularly being a big success.
And just lastly, Sam, lots of speculation that there might be a few resignations as early as this morning. Penny Mordaunt being notable yesterday as being a minister that didn't come out in defence of the Prime Minister. Lots of people suspecting she had leadership ambitions of her own. We could see a resignation from her or indeed from any other more junior ministers as well.
Yeah, people are watching Penny's movements very closely. Of course, she supported Jeremy Hunt in the 2019 leadership election and consequently lost her job in the cabinet as a result. She was in the wilderness for a little while. Boris Johnson then brought her back in a junior ministerial role. But certainly Number 10 are watching her very closely, and you could see her be the first to go and perhaps a few others. So we could have a few developments in the next few hours.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you this morning. It is 14 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines for you today. And the government's being urged to increase investment into long COVID research. The Royal College of Nursing warned that patients are suffering under what they call a postcode lottery in care, as diagnosis and treatment vary hugely across the UK.
Citizens Advice Scotland has warned that 62% more people are seeking help with their energy bills than last year. The charity added that around 20% of people regularly ran out of money before payday every month.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released a photograph of their daughter Lilibet at her first birthday party. The toddler is pictured at a picnic in the garden of the family's Windsor home and is smiling and wearing a blue dress and a bow in her hair.
Well, you know I just love babies.
Well,
I just love them.
I've
Little
got to say,
cheeks are so cute.
tell you what, she looks like her dad.
She does look like her dad. She's got red hair, just like her daddy.
She's just, and there's something in the face and the smile. I don't know, just looks like her dad.
She looks like a bonny girl to me, a bonny baby, healthy baby girl.
If you're on the radio this morning, tune into the app when you get to where you're going and have a look. It's a lovely picture. And what's not to love about a little one?
Yeah, and there is another photo that's been released of Meghan holding her as well. So we've been treated to not just one but two after this long, long wait. We're all wondering. Nothing with the Queen. I think some people were hoping to see Her Majesty with her great-granddaughter. But
I think but you see, if that had happened, that would then be labelled as capitalising on the Queen. I mean, to be fair to them, they can't win whatever they do at the moment. Look, also this one, we want to hear from you about that, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let's also talk about subscription services today, because during lockdown, everyone binged. And quite right, too. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. But did you then find yourself paying for Netflix, Amazon Prime, Sky, Disney Plus, all the other ones around about again?
Definitely Disney Plus.
Did you see? I have Amazon Prime. I had Amazon Prime anyway, and I had Netflix anyway, and I didn't get any more. That's it. That's all I've got. Well, that's fine for me.
Yeah, we want to know if you have subscriptions and if you're thinking about getting rid of any of them because of the cost of living crisis, or indeed if there's any ways of saving money when it comes to subscriptions. Or, like me, if you sometimes look at your bill and realise you've got subscriptions that you didn't realise you had. Make sure that you're fully aware of what you're paying for every month. We've got lots of tips for you on that a little bit later on in the show.
Yes, look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves, is what I was taught from a very early age.
Yes.
It's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's right. But anyway, these subscription services, I mean, with Disney Plus and things, I keep looking at that and saying, there's some sci-fi stuff which I would like on there, but generally I think there's not enough to justify
It's
what
not
I
just
pay.
Disney movies, though, just to clarify, because I thought I'll get it because it means unlimited Disney for my kids, but you've got everything from reality TV. I think the Kardashians' new series, for example,
I wouldn't watch that if you paid me to
quite
watch
like
that.
a bit of that to unwind of an afternoon.
Do you? See, I hate all that reality stuff.
I hate it, but I do.
But you watch it?
Yeah. And it also has some of those amazing series. There was the Pammy and Tommy series, which was... it was interesting. Anyway, if you, whatever your taste is, whatever your views are, there's a few things on there.
You see, I think we have very different tastes.
I'm not into sci-fi. I'm not into sci-fi.
Sci-fi is good for me. All that stuff about celebrities, don't like it. There you go. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, as Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, the UK will send its first long-range missiles to the Ukrainian army.
Well, President Zelensky used his address last night to thank Prime Minister Boris Johnson for providing Kyiv with, and I quote, exactly the weapons that it needs.
Well, for more, let's talk to Defence Editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Morning to you, Robert.
Morning.
What difference do you think these weapons are going to make?
I think they're symbolic. There are not that many to start off with, which is understandable. They're sending about 4 sets of these things. Takes quite a bit of training. They are very, very powerful indeed.
And hugely expensive, one would imagine.
Very, very expensive. And the Americans, as we know, are sending a slightly more modern, more junior version, if I can put it like that, the HIMARS, which has a slightly smaller range. It's wheeled as opposed to tracked. But it's very interesting, the reaction, as you say, Volodymyr Zelensky, thanking Boris Johnson for this, because what is so interesting now is to read his information campaign, and that is a message to the Europeans. I know you're divided. Come on. The Germans have sent stuff, the French are sending stuff, and we're getting a lot of training support from the Finns, the Estonians, obviously, and the Poles. But come on, the rest of you, particularly the Italians, where there's over 90% of public opinion is saying, we want peace. And why can't we go on buying what was cheap Russian gas? And that's now become a major political issue in the third economy of the EU. The other bit about Zelensky is his information about how terrible things are, it's very much now you see me, now you don't. It's very clever what he's doing, because he's kidding the Russians on. That things are really disastrous, he's saying. And I heard a completely unconfirmed report, it must be said, but from a very good source. For example, they're saying we're going to have to pull out of Severodonetsk, which they did. We've only got 10% of it left. The Russians push in their infantry, and if they've got lots of infantry on the ground, they can't bombard anymore with artillery. And so the Ukrainians, with crack troops, come smashing back in again. Oh, and suddenly, we've got half the city back. It's very fluid at the moment. The word you hear from all the briefers, and they are well informed, it's very fragile. And the thing hasn't settled yet. But it was astonishing to be amongst a group of defence journalists being briefed last week. They were told this is going to go on in hot war at least to the end of the year and beyond. And I think one of the few people that really does understand that is Boris Johnson.
With Zelensky perhaps very cleverly using, some of that information dissemination to try and fool the Russians, it also has the danger, does it not, of demoralising his troops. And they've done so well because they've been rallied by so much support from the West, which you could argue is not necessarily waning because we're seeing those weapons being sent, but it's not in the headlines in the same way that it was. What are you hearing about morale at the moment? Because if it is a 3-year war, that's an awfully long time.
That's the concern of Zelensky himself, and that's the political leadership. And he wants to keep it in the headlines. Absolutely right. He wants to keep it on the front burner, not the back burner. We've got these big meetings with NATO coming up, 2 major ones this month, where he's saying, pony up, come on. This is a long thing, and it's non-discretionary. It involves you, which is very difficult to get across. Now, your question is absolutely vital. I don't think they care what Zelensky says, because one of the most fascinating things is that this strange force, up to 200,000 volunteer professionals, mix and match, has its own methods of command, and they listen to their local command. And even the Brits, who've practiced this for years and years and years, don't understand completely how it's done. And they know there are crucial things, real level of casualties, for example, that they're not being told. But they're also not being told how it's being done. When you see the excellent frontline reporting and you see these units going out, 8, 10-man or 10-person squads, because they quite often have female medics and snipers and so on, who are brilliant, by the way, at their job, awful to say so. But they know what their task is. Do you hear them referring to a higher command when they're in the field? Not at all, because they're keeping security. They're not going on blabbing on the radios, which the Russians have been doing too much, because their radios haven't worked, sorry to contradict myself. And so they go on mobile phones, and people can start listening to mobile phones. The discipline, the self-discipline of they're quite a small element compared with what the Russians have got, but of the Ukrainian forces is quite something. It's quite eye-watering. And the battle is changing already.
But, I mean, it's a complete antithesis of what we're seeing from the Russian side, where they've got generals in command, but they've got no middle management as they were.
Being killed.
Well, exactly. But they've got the troopers. They've got no lance jacks. They've got no full screws there, sort of directing the men as they should be.
That was the reform that has been going on allegedly for 15 years, and it was a major part of the reform. You're absolutely right, Andrew. Why is it? An army, a fighting army, depends on its NCOs. When you're engaged, when you're confronting the enemy, it is, as you say, the sergeants right up to you. Hear the odd warrant officer, and he's really a junior officer, being killed. But what's happening to these Russians? Again, anecdotal, overheard a conversation between a Russian trooper and his mother, saying, we're being sent into villages, and there are only 5 or 6 of us at a time, and suddenly a squad of 12 of these people pop out of the ditches and whatever, and we're whacked. And this is what's going on. The other thing that is not in the news, and I'm surprised it isn't, there seems to be a creeping, undeclared mass mobilization underway from Putin. But he's desperate because they're not quality troops. The Chechens have left him down, who are always his hard men, almost his personal bodyguard. They don't like it so much. They have to go to Syria. They have the Wagner group. They go way to the east to get more levies. They can get probably about 2 more armies, but they won't be very good.
Yeah. OK. Robert, thank you. Great to talk to you, as always.
We'll stay with us. Coming up after the break, a really difficult issue, but an important one. We'll be discussing so-called honour killings here in the UK in 2022. That's after your forecast.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers. One departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon. Fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland, it is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back at 6:29. Still to come on this morning's programme. If you were kept up last night by the sound of friendly foxes, well, you're not alone. At 6:45, we'll be meeting the zoologist who shares her top tips for avoiding the noisy nocturnal animals outside your home. Personally, I think it's just earplugs. That's all you can do if you live in a city.
I say it's a city issue.
It is. They're everywhere where I live.
Oh dear. Coming up also in the next hour, from Netflix to Amazon, Disney Plus, Apple TV, I forgot about them. How many subscription services have you signed up for? because it all costs. At 7:45, we'll be trying to find out how to slash the price of them as the cost of living crisis continues.
And remember, we want to hear from you throughout the programme. We are the People's Channel, GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News. And lots of them coming in already, Stephen.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah, they have. Irv's been in touch already, because obviously we're talking a lot about the confidence vote in Boris Johnson, because 41% of the party, the parliamentary party, voted against him, which is the worst figure there's been, actually. He's ahead of Margaret Thatcher, he's ahead of Theresa May in that, he's ahead of John Major. But Irv says it's one thing to say 4 out of 10 didn't vote for him, but 6 out of 10 did. This is the same kind of argument as with Brexit. Boris has won, so everyone needs to accept it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was, in its own little way, a democratic vote, so got a point, Irv.
Frank says Boris had a good result considering in his leadership battle, Hunt v Boris, he got 60% of the vote. Last night, he got 59%, so not bad at all.
And Margaret in Wales says Boris won the party a landslide victory. What short memories they have. It's giving the opposition an opportunity to gloat. And I think, you know what, Margaret? I think that's the thing when you're talking about politicians, and, you know, there's a lot of good people, there's a lot of good politicians out there, but they've all got an eye on the prize. They're all thinking, well, if I vote against him and I don't know, Jeremy Hunt gets the job and I'm friends with Jeremy, will I then get a Secretary of State position? It's what they think.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily doing it for
Yeah, the numbers are interesting.
Themselves.
So 148 didn't have confidence. So it was 32 votes away from an ousting. 160 to 170 of the parliamentary party are actually ministers.
Yeah.
So that's a lot on the payroll.
There's a lot on the payroll.
Anyway, we'll be crunching all those numbers, full analysis a little bit later on in the programme. But as we mentioned before the break, on to quite a serious matter now. It's been 9 years, you might remember, since the murder of Rania Alayed by her husband in what's been described as an honour killing.
Yeah, it's a form of domestic abuse where primarily women and girls are abused for supposedly violating the so-called honour of their families and communities.
Well, our culture and social affairs editor, Inaya Falarin Eamonn, takes a look at how the issue's been addressed since the tragedy.
We wouldn't use the term honour-based violence. We would definitely use the term dishonour, because when we're talking about this issue, we're talking about often normally young women that are subjected to domestic abuse, rape and even murder in the most serious cases.
Rania Alayed, 9 years ago today, was murdered by her husband, Ahmed al-Khatib, in a so-called honour killing. The prosecution said Ms. Alayed had been killed for becoming, quote, too westernised and establishing an independent life. The mother of three was known to Greater Manchester Police before she was killed and had had contact with officers from the force. Honour-based violence is a collection of practices used to control the behaviour of women and girls within families in the name of honour. Honour-based violence include forced marriage, female genital mutilation, assault, rape and murder. The number of honour-based related offences recorded has been massively increasing, with under 1,000 cases recorded in 2016 to more than 2,500 in the year to 2021. Each year, 12 to 15 women are killed for so-called honour. Victims are often younger women, under the age of 25. In the UK, cases often involve ethnic minority victims as well as perpetrators, particularly from South Asian, Middle Eastern and African ethnicities. I spoke to Anita Prem, the founder of Freedom Charity, an organisation which campaigns against honour-based violence.
How serious is it right now in the UK? The truth is we don't know. At Freedom, we have seen an increase in the number of calls from young people that are absolutely desperate, seeking help and support and needing to be rescued from the most harrowing of situations. Authorities are very stretched at the moment. I think when it's reported, they try to take it seriously, but knowing what to do, there is still a lack of training and awareness.
Some campaigners have argued that fears of being seen as culturally and racially insensitive have led to institutional reluctance to tackle this issue head-on. Social cohesion expert Rakib Ehsan agrees.
I feel that public institutions are paralysed by the forces of identity politics and political correctness. The message that they have a duty of care to vulnerable individuals who are experiencing domestic abuse, irrespective of their racial identity, ethnic heritage, and religious affiliation, that point really needs to be hammered home.
Anaya Flower and Eamonn, GB News.
Well, we've had a statement from the Home Office in relation to this, and they say so-called honour-based abuse is utterly deplorable, and we're committed to ensuring that it has no place in our society. This year, we've changed the law to extend the offence of forced marriage to cover instances of arranging the marriage of a child, even when coercion is not used, to ban the practices of virginity testing and hymenoplasty. Last year, our forced marriage unit trained over 1,000 professionals in how to respond to forced marriage, and the £150,000 we provided to Carmen Ivana's honour-based abuse helpline enabled them to help victims in more than 2,000 cases.
Okay.
The fact that there are 2,000 cases that group
Shocking.
worked with alone is pretty scary.
Let us know your thoughts on that and indeed the rest of the day's news. And stay tuned our way. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to go through the papers this morning with Liz Kershaw and Lord Moylan. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back at 6:38. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this morning. The Prime Minister will meet later today with his cabinet as he seeks to move past the confidence vote. Boris Johnson has insisted that last night's victory was decisive and said that the government can now move on and focus on what really matters to people.
The government's being urged to increase investment into long COVID research. The Royal College of Nursing said that patients are suffering under what they call a postcode lottery in care, as diagnosis and treatment vary hugely across the UK.
A survey by Amnesty International UK has found that about 3 in 10 people are worried they could become homeless in the next 5 years due to housing costs. The group is calling for the government to make a safe and affordable housing a human right protected by law.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released a photo of Lilibet at her first birthday party. She's pictured at a picnic in the garden of the family's Windsor home and is smiling and wearing a blue dress and a bow in her hair and looks pretty much like her dad.
Gorgeous photo.
It is a nice picture.
Lovely.
And, you know, whatever you think of those two, which is entirely up to you, you can't hold any grudge against a child.
Well, I did ask the question when we opened the programme, has that picture softened your views to the Sussexes? And I got an email directly responding saying, N-O. So there we go. Look, we're going to go through the papers now. We're joined by the former advisor to Boris Johnson, now Conservative life peer in the House of Lords, Lord Daniel Moylan. And he is joined this morning by the broadcaster, Liz Kershaw. A very good morning to you both. I don't know how well you slept after last night's excitement. So I was up pretty late watching it all and then stuck on social media and didn't sleep a wink myself. Daniel, shall we start with the Guardian front page?
Yeah.
Perhaps predictable, their view in all of this. What are they saying this morning?
Well, they're saying that basically what a number of newspapers and MPs want to say, which is that although the Prime Minister won the vote yesterday and won it convincingly, actually he lost it. And this is, I don't know how you get to that point and you're a newspaper and you say he was humiliated, but he actually won the vote. This vote was a democratic vote. It was called by people who opposed the Prime Minister. They lost, and they don't seem to want to accept the result of a democratic vote they called for. Last night on the television, we had the disgusting spectacle of Sir Roger Gale, a long-time Boris enemy, drooling about how, having lost the vote, he was going to carry on and still try and destabilise the government and bring the Prime Minister down. Happily, it was after the watershed,
yes.
So children didn't have to see this disgusting display.
Do you not acknowledge that the rebellion was larger than even some of his closest allies were expecting? We were talking about trying to get the numbers under 100
I don't know
yesterday.
what his closest allies were expecting, because they were speculating. It's a secret ballot. They were speculating just like anybody else. And of course, you'd want the numbers to be as small as possible. The fact is, when Boris was elected leader, before he was elected leader, the Conservative MPs at the time chose him and Jeremy Hunt to go forward to the membership of the party. He got a certain percentage of the vote from MPs compared to Jeremy Hunt. He beat Jeremy Hunt, but not by that much. He's now actually got a higher percentage of MPs in the party voting for him than originally did. There have always been MPs in the Conservative Party who don't like Boris. There have always been MPs, I'm afraid, who don't like government policy and don't like Brexit. A lot of this is still about Brexit. But in fact, the percentage he's got is perfectly decent and workable. But the point is, it's a vote. It's a democratic vote, and he won. So you either accept it, which is what I think most people and most Conservative members and activists want. You either accept it or you don't. I think most of the people who voted against Boris will say, the country, the party, and even ourselves deserve stable government. We've had a go. It didn't work. We'll rally round the Prime Minister now because he won the vote.
OK. Liz, what's the Daily Mail's take on all of this?
Well, carrying on, I agree with Daniel, as he used to say in the coalition. I agree with Nick. I agree with Daniel about last night's spectacle. I just went to bed in disgust, to be honest. You'd have thought, watching all the TV news channels, that Boris has just been slaughtered in the poll. I put out a little poll, actually, of our own,
right,
and asked the public if they would trust us this morning to bring them the facts and the truth. And 79% said yes and 21% said no.
Oh.
So I think...
I'd say, in Boris's words, that's a decisive victory.
I think that's a decisive victory. But the thing is that nobody likes it. It takes me back to the 2017 election when I was on holiday with my friends, so just the two of us isolated on a Caribbean island. Sounds tough.
Sounds rubbish.
And we sat up all night and we watched it on the news, the results rolling in. She was a fervent Corbynite, even though she worked for the BBC and she just paid £400,000 cash for her home.
Right.
Anyway, she was trying to tell me all night and all the next day that actually the Labour Party had won the general election.
Yeah.
I was saying, excuse me, maths. And then we come to Brexit. Oh, it's only 52%, 48%. It's not really a victory. Accept it. And people have been trying to bring that down since, and it's the same with this. Anyway, yeah. Are they opening the door to Keir Starmer, to the Labour Party, becoming triumphant? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, what people tell the polls and what they say in public, they go into that polling booth and they think about their house, their job, their lifestyle, the state of their community, and the he's not going to pull it off.
I mean, the only problem is, Daniel, in all of this, so you have to look historically. Margaret Thatcher, John Major, and Theresa May all had these votes. There was only John Major. He got 27% of the party against him. He went on to fight another general election. The rest of them didn't. It was ultimately a fatal blow. They survived it, but it was a fatal blow.
Theresa May resigned after she had led the Conservative Party to a 9% vote share in a national election, not an opinion poll, a national election, in which the Conservatives came 5th. Now, there was no way a leader of the Conservative Party could say, I've just brought us in 5th in a national election, can I carry on? No, she had to go. It wasn't because MPs failed to back her as such, because they did back her at the confidence vote. It's because that's what happened. And Margaret Thatcher was a different matter. And I think attitudes were very different then, and the Conservative Party was much less used to having leadership elections. I mean, I don't think we'd ever had a leadership election in office prior to that point, because the first leader elected was Ted Heath, and we were in opposition, and again, he had to stand again after he'd lost the election in 1974. So this was the first time with Margaret Thatcher. I think we were all learning the ropes. This is not the same.
It's
Precedent
not the same,
doesn't work.
But equally, 52 pieces of legislation were brought forward in the Queen's speech just a couple of weeks ago. Is the Prime Minister going to have difficulty getting that legislation through?
Well, the answer is very simple.
Lost his majority.
The answer is he hasn't lost his majority, but if he has lost his majority, if there are Conservative MPs who persistently fail to vote with the government or vote against the government on legislation which is much of it in the manifesto and all of it in the Queen's speech, then he will have lost his majority. And the right response to that is to call a general election and to say to the people who've, you have left the Conservative Party.
So do you think that might happen feasibly? You think that there could be a general election
I'm just talking about the constitutional position. The constitutional position is that if the government can't get its legislation through Parliament, then, or through the House of Commons at least, then either somebody else forms a government. Now, that won't be Starmer in this, because whatever these unhappy Conservative MPs do, and I think most of them will rally around the Prime Minister, but if they did, we're speculating now, if they did, they still wouldn't join the Labour Party and vote for Starmer to be. So either somebody else forms a government, or you have a general election, because you have to have a government that has a majority in the House of Commons.
I want to just get your views on, do you think that is a possibility in the next year?
A general election is always a possibility, especially now that we've abolished that wretched and destructive Fixed-Term Parliament Act. And it is now back in the Prime Minister's hands and unreviewable by the courts when a decision is taken to, when a general election is held. There's always a possibility constitution.
I've been saying on this programme for weeks, let's have a general election. Let the people decide. It's a democracy. I don't want to see a democratically elected government of any colour be brought down by the media with its vested interests. And they've never been able to accept the verdict of the British people in 2019, 2016 with Brexit, and they've just, you just have to look at the papers today. It gets worse. Night of the Blonde Knives is The Sun, which is a Boris backing paper. Defiant and Unbowed Express, you'd expect. Daily Mail, Boris vows Al Bashon. Then The Eye, quite a nice paper, wounded Johnson in peril. The party is over, Boris, says the Metro. Now we get really digging deep into it. PM clinging to power after vote humiliation. The Telegraph, which he used to work for, hollow victory tears Tories apart, actually true. A wounded Victor, OK. Johnson wounded. The party's over, Boris, says Labour's Mirror. And Carry On Pinocchio, says the comic that's the Star. But they're all showing their bent. But if he can't run the country, and is the leader, democratically elected leader with a vote of confidence in his favour of the ruling party, put it to the people.
He has said, though, doesn't he? He's not in favour of a snap election.
So we shall see. It's not good for the country to have a general election.
No, it's
but
not.
This isn't,
but constitutionally, if you have a government, if these people, if the Roger Gales and all those people are serious,
Andrea Leadsons,
and they're saying we're not going to vote for government legislation, I mean, what mandate do they have to say that? But if they say they're not going to vote for government legislation, then obviously, if the government can't command a majority in the House of Commons, and if Keir Starmer can't form a government, then there has to be a general election. There has to be a party in power.
But in order to...
And absolutely, these people have no mandate for doing that.
But
they were elected as Conservatives on a manifesto.
He's got to bring them back on side, hasn't he? And to do that, perhaps he has to become more Conservative again. Smaller state, lower taxes.
Well, I totally agree. And I don't agree with the policies on the green levies and a 1% insurance rise. And I'm disgusted that, unlike other countries, they haven't taken a huge chunk off fuel duty and thereby reducing the VAT on fuel. Half of what
he's missed opportunities to do that, though. Recent opportunities, and he hasn't taken them.
No, he needs to now. And I'll tell you something else. Daniel quite rightly said these MPs have no mandate from their constituents. I did the other poll I did on Twitter last night was, should Conservative MPs in Parliament be forced to declare how they voted? Because they are not there to vote for themselves. Everybody has the right to go into a polling booth and keep their vote secret, but they're there to represent the wishes of their constituents. So the constituents have the right to know. My MP hasn't come out and said what yet. So 83% of people on Twitter, non-scientific, that responded to my little poll said, yes, I would really like to know how my MP votes.
Although they might vote differently if it was a public vote. Well,
therefore they've no conviction or integrity, have they?
Oh, well, look, you both raised very interesting points, but we've got to leave it there. Daniel, Liz, thank you. We'll see you both a little bit later on. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, if urban foxes are becoming the bane of your life, you are not alone. From late-night screaming to bin rummaging, oh, it's so infuriating when they do that, to digging up your garden, foxes, indeed, have the ability to cause chaos.
So, what can we do about it if you're affected by that? Joining us now is zoologist and broadcaster Sasha Norris. Morning to you, Sasha. I've got to say, I feel a bit sorry for the foxes, because it's not their fault, but what can we do to try and live in better harmony?
Don't feed them.
Yeah, so if we look at the sort of problems that foxes cause and then perhaps look at the counter arguments to that. So if we start with digging in the garden, so the reason you get little holes all over your lawn is that what foxes are doing is they're hunting for earthworms. So although foxes do eat a lot of human food that we throw away, and that's why they're so common initially in our cities, because we're quite wasteful of food, they're also hunting for themselves, and what they're doing is they're looking for earthworms. One of the things people can do to counteract this, people don't want them in their garden, one of the best ways is actually to have a sprinkler that kind of turns on randomly, because foxes absolutely hate being wet. I actually run a wildlife rescue here in Herefordshire, where I live, and I have a resident fox that lives with me long term. He had all sorts of problems as a cub, and he absolutely hates it. So occasionally I have to give him a bath, because if they have ectoparasites and so on, and he absolutely hates that. So spraying with water is a really good idea. But just to say on that note, he's absolutely never bitten me or hurt me. So foxes, another thing about foxes is people are frightened they're going to attack their children or they're going to hurt them. Foxes are generally very nervous of people. They're very non-aggressive. So this kind of applies across the board to wildlife. Wildlife doesn't want to hurt you or approach you, generally speaking. Obviously, people sometimes tame foxes by feeding them, and that kind of causes them to approach more. But there was a study from Bristol University, I think in 2020, that showed that most of the bites that foxes have caused to humans are more exploratory. So they people are asleep and the fox approaches them and kind of nips them to see what's going on. So a kind of rabid, aggressive fox is very unlikely.
Yeah, although we tend to get terrified by those sorts of stories, don't we? Understandably, I suppose. I have my own anecdote just last week with my little ones, picking them up from school on the way to the playground. We spotted what we thought was a kitten in just through the hedgerow in the playground, and it turns out, as it turned its face to us, it was actually a very, very, very young fox cub, perhaps a day old, and it was in the school grounds. And we were really worried that that meant that the school was probably going to have to exterminate it and get rid of them, because of course where you've got lots of children, you've got concerned adults. But it was so sweet to see it in broad daylight and so vulnerable and lovely. I mean, can they be compatible at that kind of proximity to children?
Yeah, so another thing that people worry about is parasites that foxes carry. But actually, at the moment in the UK, I think it's due to say that the parasites that foxes carry are the same that our dogs and cats are carrying. And of course, we come in much closer contact with dogs and cats. So, the key thing there with children is to remove all animal feces, whether they're your pet or foxes, as quickly and hygienically as possible. Yeah, in terms of aggression, it's extremely unlikely and extremely rare. But obviously, these animals do have teeth, but again, they tend to be sort of opportunistic hunters. So they go out on their own, and they're not in groups, they're not in packs, they're not like wolves or lions. And the other flip side of that is that foxes actually eat up to 6 rats or more a day each, and when they're feeding cubs,
great.
so they're called. Yeah, so they're having a significant impact on rodent populations in all of our cities. And that actually, interestingly, has an impact on Lyme's disease. So they reduce the distribution of rodents, and then that reduces the spread of ticks, which reduces Lyme's disease.
There's a good side to everything. Sasha, we're out of time. We've got to leave it there. But thank you so much indeed. Great to talk to you this morning.
Stating the case for the
Thank
urban
you
fox
very much.
there. Thank you so much. Look, stay with us. We're going to be talking about Boris Johnson, as you might expect, the morning after the night before. We'll be talking to a pollster about what the future holds. Is the party over for him, or can he get on with the job? All of that in just a moment.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers. One departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon, fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland. It is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
The Prime Minister survives a vote of confidence in his leadership, vowing to deliver for Britain as he convenes Cabinet today.
A very good morning to you. It's 7:01 on Tuesday, the 7th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister will convene Cabinet this morning in an attempt to move on from last night's vote of confidence that saw 4 in 10 of his own MPs vote to remove him. Speaking after the vote, the PM hailed the result as extremely good and decisive.
In response, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, called the result grotesque and said the Conservative Party had ignored the British people by keeping Boris Johnson in power.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky has used his nightly address to thank the Prime Minister for providing Kyiv with exactly the weapons it needs. The UK has provided the country with some long-range missile systems after Russia launched renewed strikes on the capital.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a picture of their 1-year-old daughter Lilibet as they celebrated her birthday during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
We'd love to know what you're thinking and wanting to talk about this morning. Is it about Boris Johnson? Is it about subscription services that perhaps you accrued a few too many during lockdown? GB Views at gbnews.uk or send us a tweet at GB News.
And don't forget, you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube for free and get all of the latest on the big stories everyone's talking about.
So, our main news this morning, and the Prime Minister has survived that vote of confidence in his leadership.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
Well, in a speech after the vote, a defiant Boris Johnson called the result decisive and vowed to move on and deliver for Britain.
And what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's in Downing Street for us. Morning, Tom. Is this a line in the sand, as the Prime Minister hopes?
Well, hope is the operative word there, Stephen. Certainly the Prime Minister hopes that now everything can be put behind him, but certainly the margin of victory probably wasn't quite decisive enough to put this whole question to bed. The Prime Minister certainly has a big job on his hands to convince the 148 of his own MPs who voted no confidence in his leadership that he is the right man for the job, that they need to get behind the other 59% of Conservative MPs and unite the party. That's a big challenge that the Prime Minister now has, and there are certain dates by which he needs to pass certain milestones in order to keep this leadership on track. Let's not forget it's only around 3 weeks away until two twin by-elections, one in the so-called Blue Wall down in Tiverton and one in the so-called Red Wall up in Wakefield. It's hard to think of a much more difficult perfect storm for the Prime Minister, showing how different parts of the country may well respond to his leadership, albeit there being certain local factors in both of these votes as well, given how these by-elections came about. Certainly the Prime Minister this morning trying to move that conversation on, convening Cabinet as he does each Tuesday morning, talking about primarily the cost of living crisis, the NHS backlog, and indeed ploughing that £37 billion into the pockets of the people of Britain to try and get them through this difficult period, with inflation spiralling as it is in the United States and the European Union as well. However, on the other hand, looking at the motivation behind those Conservative MPs who decided not to back the Prime Minister yesterday, talking to so many of them in Parliament, it doesn't seem that the stories about cake or beer or wine or cheese was potentially the most primary factor in their decision. Certainly a catalyst, but also in their decision to waver in support for the Prime Minister was the way in which the government has been oscillating between various positions, has been pushed about by various interest groups, has been U-turning again and again on various policies. Will that group of Conservative MPs, potentially those who would like to see a greater steadfastness within the Cabinet, who would like to see a greater sense of conservatism from the Prime Minister, will they be assuaged by the Prime Minister's announcement, or indeed words this morning on ploughing billions, yet more billions upon billions into people's pockets? Is that something that's going to dampen inflation? Well, in the eyes of many fiscal Conservatives, probably not. Potentially, the Prime Minister has a very difficult tightrope to walk in this sense. Some of those who opposed him were on the left of the party, some of those who opposed him were on the right of the party. And whilst that provided an opportunity for the Prime Minister in that there is no obvious successor, in that the opposition to him is not coalescing around one individual or even one vision for the party, it also creates some problems for the Prime Minister. How does he win back these disparate groups? It's going to be fascinating to watch in the coming days and weeks.
Indeed, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. For more on this story, let's talk now to Deputy Political Editor at the Daily Express, Sam Lister, who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you, Sam. Look, lots of comparisons, naturally, looking back through Conservative history at former leaders who have survived these sorts of confidence votes but gone on to pretty unsuccessful, whether that be unable to legislate or forced to resign or lose at a general election. Do those rules apply to Boris Johnson?
Very few rules seem to apply to Boris Johnson. That's been his problem, obviously, with Partygate. He obviously didn't seem to think the rules necessarily applied to him during that, and that's what's got him into this trouble. But we know that he has an ability to regenerate and reinvent himself, and that has always been his biggest strength. So it is too early to write him off. He is a political Houdini. He can rehabilitate and win people over. We've seen that in the past. That is something he's done before. So I don't think it's over for him yet, but he's got a long way to go.
How is it not over for him, though? Because in terms of what the parliamentary party can do, sort of within the system, that's it for 12 months.
We think so, but they can change the rules. Those rules are not set in stone. They could change it so that they could have another election after 6 months. If the party wants to do that, the party can do that. So we could be back here in 6 months. They could also kind of coordinate to bring about resignations in the ministerial ranks. That would destabilise the government. And they could also frustrate legislation. There's some quite controversial legislation coming up on Brexit in Northern Ireland, which has a lot of opposition within certain sections of the Tory party. If they got their act together, they could kind of frustrate that and frustrate his legislative agenda.
But wouldn't that be, I mean, one of the papers has called it a self-destruct button. Wouldn't that be the case? Because a party in that much disarray is not going to win a general election.
No, and that's the decision MPs have got to make. Who are we fighting here? Are we fighting the Prime Minister or are we fighting Labour? Are we trying to keep Labour out of number 10 or are we going to open the door to number 10 to Labour? And that's what they're going to have to wrestle with now. The Prime Minister wants the party to get behind him. He's convening Cabinet today, as we heard. He's going to make this statement about how he wants to deliver for Britain. He wants to push ahead with the agenda for reform. And MPs have got to decide now, you know, do we get behind him and try and get our party back on track, or do we just essentially hand the keys to number 10 to Labour?
It was interesting hearing what Nadeem Zahawi, one of the favourites actually to replace him if he had lost that vote, was saying last night in terms of President Zelensky. He said he'll be punching the air at the results of this. Now, lots of people perhaps cynically saying that the war in Ukraine played out very well for Boris Johnson to recover from the early disruption of the Partygate story. Could that happen again? Could we see perhaps Boris Johnson really finding some safe ground to unify the country on?
Yeah, I think he hinted yesterday at tax cuts, and obviously tax has been a huge issue for the party. They're very upset about the national insurance hike. They're very conscious of the cost of living crisis, and they want tax cuts from the Prime Minister. And if he can offer that, then that is a potential way to bring the party back together. I think that would be quite a unifying move for him to do. But obviously, he doesn't really have much money to play with, so it's quite difficult for him.
It is difficult, but isn't it interesting that we know the cost of living crisis is one of the key points on the agenda at the Cabinet meeting today? If there are significant moves on that, which could be quite bold moves, then that's going to pull the people behind him. But, of course, these Tory MPs, whatever else they've got on their agenda, they want to keep their seats. Exactly. They want to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
So he could play a winner here.
Yeah, and I think he's got to show that he's going to run a disciplined government, that he's going to run a serious government. They want to see signs that he's got a proper agenda and a vision for the country. You're really looking at 18 months to a general election. They want to see significant concrete offerings from the Prime Minister. But, you know, it's a lot of people to win over, and they're from different bits of the party. So it is a very, very difficult job he's got to do. But we know that, you know, he always defies the law of political gravity, so it's not beyond his reach.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be covering politics. It's certainly never dull, is it?
No, not at the
All right,
moment.
Sam.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, the Prime Minister's opponents, of course, will be looking at those by-elections which are coming up, Wakefield and Tiverton and Honiton.
So how will last night's vote affect those elections and the future of Boris Johnson? We're joined now by Kieran Pedley, Director of Politics at the pollster Ipsos. Look, one would suppose, really, wouldn't they, that the writing's on the wall with those by-elections. It might not really affect things for Boris Johnson at all.
Well, good morning. I think Boris Johnson's in something of a delicate situation, to put it politely, after last night. So clearly he wants to reset his premiership and to sort of reassert authority over the Conservative Party and the political agenda. And I suppose if we're talking about those by-elections specifically, then one of the challenges there is if they do go against him, as it looks like they will from the polling that we do see, then clearly that makes it much more difficult for Boris Johnson to sort of mount this comeback and sustain it.
I guess part of the problem for the Prime Minister with this is, though, that he was, you know, especially at this time within the parliamentary cycle, you know, he was expected to lose, wasn't he? I mean, it would be quite a surprise if the government held on to these seats almost.
Perhaps, although we have seen in recent parliaments the Labour Party losing by-elections, for example, even though they were in opposition. So, I mean, that can happen. But I think in ordinary circumstances, you're quite right. I think it would be fairly, maybe not straightforward, but it would be a fairly sound argument for the government to make that governments tend to lose by-elections mid-parliament. But, of course, we do have to set that within the context of what's going on around Boris Johnson's leadership more widely at the moment.
Looking at current polls, how do you think the next year will play out for Boris Johnson? I mean, we've been doing lots of sort of historical analysis of previous leaders, May, Thatcher, Major, none of which had much success after even winning a confidence vote. Do you think the same will happen to Boris Johnson?
Well, I think ultimately it's going to depend on events. We should remind ourselves that in terms of public opinion, Boris Johnson's facing a really difficult spot at the moment, to put it politely. 55% of the public tell us that they think the Conservatives should change their leader before the next general election, and 64% of the public are dissatisfied with the job Boris Johnson is doing as Prime Minister. But that's now. I mean, what matters most, I suppose, is what happens in the future. Cost of living, as you've rightly alluded to on this show, is top of the voters' agendas at the moment. Concern about price rises and inflation is at a 40-year high. And what will concern the Conservatives somewhat at the moment is that people are more likely to trust Labour on that issue rather than the Conservatives by a 15-point margin, by 37% to 22%. So closing that gap in the next year is going to be something that's very important to the Conservatives' fortunes and obviously, therefore, by definition, Boris Johnson's. We're seeing that following Rishi Sunak's recent announcements on cost of living, fewer people are telling us that they think the government isn't doing enough. So that's positive for the Conservatives. But obviously how they develop those plans and deliver in the next sort of 6 months to 12 months will be very important for what happens next.
Kieran Pedley from Ipsos, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. On those cost of living issues, a few of you have been in touch this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I think we might get a bombshell announcement within the next few months on cost of living. Leo's been in touch. Morning to you. He says, last month my gas and electric bill was £175.28 for a 3-bed bungalow. This month, the bill was £104, so we saved £71 there. He's achieved it by using less use of gas central heating. The problems will mainly arise in October, when, unfortunately, any savings I make will have to be on my charity donations, the RSPCA,
Leo.
the Donkey Sanctuary, Cats Protection. Already cut down on your Sky subscription. Also using the car a lot less where possible. It's an important part of our lives at 80 years old. Well, I bet it is. And it's a shame that charities, I know this is going to be a very difficult time for charities, but you've achieved a huge amount, saving £71 a month on that bill. Shouldn't have to do it, should we? But, you know, it's the way it is.
Yeah, well, Amy says, I get £150 a week for me, my husband and daughter. I'm disabled and my electricity bill's £40 a week. We can't afford to live.
And on the Boris vote issue, Albert says, because obviously it's 41% of the party saying, you know, we want you to go. Albert says, for me, it's a way of the party saying he needs to do what he promised. Well, that's the levelling. I understand absolutely why the levelling up agenda hasn't really happened, because of then he promised that, then we had COVID. Totally get that. But perhaps he needs to, as you say, Albert, refocus on what was promised ahead of that landslide election victory in 2019. And if he can do that, keep the red wall seats on side and all that.
Well, Bill in Teesside says Boris may have won the confidence vote, but it is the beginning of the end. I voted for Boris in the last election. Would I vote for him again? Absolutely not. I no longer trust him.
Whereas Andrew says, in regards to those MPs who voted against Boris and did not accept the results of the vote, they should now vote with their feet and resign. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because they won't do that. There's no hope in hell of that happening.
Well, Mark says the general election would be a bad idea with all that's going on at the moment. I'm pretty sure Boris Johnson thinks it would be a bad idea at the moment as well. The question is, will he need to call one constitutionally if he loses his ability to legislate? All of this will play out in the next year.
It will.
He's got a year now of immunity.
Yeah,
assuming the rules don't change.
I'm against a general election at this stage, and I'll tell you for why.
Yeah.
It's because they cost millions of pounds to run, and we've got millions of pounds that could be spent in a better way.
Yeah, and look, here we are on the 7th of June. It's not even halfway through since his election in 2019. I think the 12th of June, it marks exactly halfway, the halfway point. And, you know, no one can really be judged on that yet, can they? We've got to give it a bit longer.
Not with what we've been through.
Yeah.
I think, which is, you know, a hugely difficult couple of
Extraordinary
years.
times.
So, let us know what you think. Your views matter, of course. We're the People's Channel, so we'd love to know what you think. It's all about you. It's all about the voters at the end of the day with this, isn't it? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Right, the time is 7:18. Time to bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And a survey by Amnesty International UK has found that around 3 in 10 people are worried they could become homeless in the next 5 years due to housing costs. The group's calling for the government to make safe and affordable housing a human right protected by law.
The government's being urged to increase investment in long COVID research. The Royal College of Nursing says patients are suffering under what they call a postcode lottery in care, as diagnosis and treatment vary hugely across the UK.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released a photo of their daughter Lilibet at her first birthday party. The toddler is pictured at a picnic in the garden of the family's Windsor residence and is seen smiling and wearing a blue dress and a bow in her beautiful red hair.
You see, I love a baby.
Yeah.
I love children.
So do I.
I think it's got.
You know I do.
But when it comes to other people's children like that, it's a beautiful picture. She looks like a lovely little girl. But you go completely mushy.
I do. I'm just, yeah, I've always done. I thought I might stop once I'd had my own kids, but I just love babies and she's just gorgeous. And I've been dying to see a picture of her for ages because I was sort of thinking, why aren't we seeing pictures of them? But she's adorable.
To me.
Yeah, I think they soften people's views of the Sussexes because at the end of the day, they're just human and they're just a family. And, you know...
Oh, you're getting broody.
No, I've had my children. I've had my children. I'm delighted with my little ones, but I do love kids.
Don't fancy any more?
Lots of people do. No, thank you.
Could have 3 or 4 more. Isabel.
No, 2 and through. Thank you very much.
2 and through. Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Now, passengers hoping to travel home from their holidays.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, here we go. Being left stranded abroad after flights have been cancelled.
Many people say they've struggled to get help from their airline in all of this, and most airports in the UK say they're struggling to cope with the number of passengers, and hundreds of flights a week are having to be cancelled.
Well, let's find out more from our Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's at Birmingham Airport. Well, what's the overall situation, Will?
Yes, you can hear from just above me. That is one flight that is taking off today from Birmingham Airport. There are obviously lots of cancellations across the country, lots of problems here at Birmingham, Manchester, and in particular Gatwick Airport. We've been seeing a lot about Gatwick at the moment in the news. The main story that we've been talking about is this travel chaos, this travel disruption continues. It's been going on for a good couple of months now, ever since that Easter period, that Easter holiday. It's carried on all the way through to around the Platinum Jubilee bank holiday, and it's continuing this week. Some people feeling that they've been stranded and left behind by their airlines. They've managed to make it out to wherever they're going, to destinations like Turkey, to destinations like Spain and other parts of Europe, but then they're unfortunately being left out there when their flight has to be cancelled. Now, some people have said that they've been really struggling, as you said in the intro, to get in touch with their airlines, often at desks where people don't really have the right information, where there's lots of angry people, a bit of a mob forming around them. But you can understand if people have been left behind, that kind of mentality might start to form, especially when people are given helpline numbers and they say that they can't get through. Now, the airline industry says they are struggling to cope with parts of these problems, but they are doing everything they can. Here at Birmingham Airport, they're reminding people to arrive early, to make sure that they've got all of their liquids sorted out, and to make sure that they know the procedures that they're going to have to follow. Downing Street saying that they have been having meetings with the aviation industry. They've been speaking to different leaders within the aviation industry, but they are very much putting it back on the aviation industry, saying we've given you funding, we've given you time, and these supply shortages, whether it's a supply of people, a supply of a workforce. Obviously, during the pandemic, lots of redundancies were made, and they are saying that now is the time for the airlines and the air industry to really take control of this problem, especially before summer, which is only really that big period a few weeks away.
Yeah, it's not far off at all, is it, Will? I tell you what, those planes seem so low over you, they're going to give you a haircut if you're not careful.
a quick buzz. Yeah, maybe I need it.
Oh, it's looking good. Looking very
good.
sharp this morning. Will Hollis, thank you very much indeed.
Right, stay with us this morning. We're taking you through the top sports stories after the break with Paul Coytes.
He owes me money.
Does he?
Yeah.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers, one departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon. Fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland, it is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.27, welcome back. This is Breakfast on GB News. Still to come for you this morning. Are you avoiding the dentist because you're worried about the bill? And in about an hour, we'll discover some of the cheaper ways to look after your teeth, which could save you some much-needed cash in the long term. I've got to go to the dentist.
Yeah.
tomorrow.
I can't get an appointment. I need to get an appointment. Coming up at 7:45, we'll be talking about Netflix to Amazon, Disney to Apple TV. We're asking how many subscription services you've signed up to pay for. And at 7:45, we'll be discovering how you can actually save money on your streaming.
And remember, you can join in anything that you want to talk about today. We would love to hear from you. As always, gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews.
OK, it's time to talk through the biggest sports stories with Paul Coyton. There's a debt to settle, I believe, in the studio.
You owe me money.
Yeah, I know. Can you just give us one more week, son? Hucking, I've tried my best. I want to try and raise it. I just don't think I've got it this time. If we can leave it till next week, is that all right?
Yeah, all right.
Izzy, you missed out on this because of course, the last tip that I gave you.
Yeah.
Didn't go down well. That was Cheltenham, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And it was all a bit of a disaster, and Eamonn's still not talking to me after that. Whereas Stephen has come in, and it wasn't me, though, was it? It was the clerk of it was Andrew Cooper, wasn't it, at Epsom? So I know you were there. Did you back the winner, by the way?
No,
the Derby?
we won the last race of the day, but we lost every other one, so we came away with a net loss.
OK, so...
Desert Crown.
Desert Crown. So this is your first proper bet, isn't it?
First proper bet. And I feel a bit guilty because I don't know how to put a bet online. I've never done it. So Paul did it with his own money.
Yes, with my own money.
With your own money.
Yeah.
But you still owe me £8.75.
I do. I still owe you. See, the thing is, he's now learning tic-tac, and that's it, and it's all this. So Desert Crown, so we got the tip, didn't we, and said, look, I'll have it. You said I'll have a fiver on it, and Anne said I'll have a fiver on it. So maybe if she just doesn't find out about this, we can keep it to herself. So with the stake that you gave me, so you walk out with £8.75 profit. So everything worked out very, very well in the end.
Very pleased about
See,
that.
I always feel guilty if we talk about betting on the TV. We always get the odd person emailing in saying, mustn't talk about betting. But then I just have to point out this story on Saturday. We were told that ITV were asked to move their tribute to the Queen so that she didn't miss the 3:06 at Doncaster.
Oh, is that right? Is that
and
right?
if you're the Queen, you can do that.
Absolutely. Can we move the race? And also, you mentioned about, of course, there's upsides and downsides. The upside there is Stephen. I went with another one, my other tip, which got nowhere. So I ended up losing. So there you go. I think they call it beginner's luck in the business. There we go.
Well,
he's going to say, let it ride now. Let it go for the next race.
Look, what's happening with Phil Mickelson?
Now, Phil Mickelson. Now, this is the Saudi-backed Rebel Golf Tour, which Greg Norman is the managing director of. Now, I tell you this, there's a thing about this, and wherever you hear it spoken about, nobody actually mentions the proper name, and I'll tell you why. And it's Live Golf. It's L-I-V. And I think it's because there's people that do the job like me that actually are not really sure and they don't want to get it wrong, whereas I don't care. It doesn't matter. So Live, actually, it's Roman numerals for 54. Yes. I don't know whether this is the reason it's called that. So whether you would actually call it Live or call it 54 for the L1V. And the reason they've called it that is because 54, if you hit a birdie on every... if there was a normal par 72 golf course, 54, are you following me? 54 would be if you hit a birdie on every one, or 54 is the amount of golf holes that there would be in a tournament. So that's why they go with this 54 thing. So they call it Live, L-I-V, whatever it is, however it's pronounced, but that's what that's for. Now, Phil Mickelson, when we talk about money, there's so much money that's going into this, and it's a Rebel Golf Tour. Now, you've got the PGA, who run all the other major golf tournaments. You've got the Open, you've got the Masters, the PGA, they're in charge of the Ryder Cup as well. And they've threatened that any golfer that will go and play in these Saudi-backed tournaments will be banned from playing in the PGA. So, you grow up playing golf and you imagine what it's like, winning the US Open or the Open or the Masters or whatever you. But they're being told that you can't play in this anymore. Now, Saudi Arabia and Greg Norman are coming along, but they're waving around money. But we're not talking about a small amount of money. We're talking huge, huge cash. Ooh. Now, Tiger Woods... I'll even give you the chance to try and work out how much do you think he has been offered to be the face of this?
I have absolutely no idea.
$400 million.
What?
$400 million.
That is grotesque.
It's insane money. You've got Phil Mickelson, who has already had a go at this and called them scary, and I can't use the word that he used.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
the Saudi Arabians. And then also he's using it to kind of broker a deal with the PGA, saying, well, I'm getting this over here. Maybe you can increase this. And he's pretty much annoyed everybody. So now he's announced that he's going to be playing at the Centurion Club in St Albans, which starts on Friday, by the way. and he's going to pick up £160 million. This is without even hitting a ball.
Gosh.
Dustin Johnson, former world number one, we're talking about £100 million. So there's still a lot of top golfers like Rory McIlroy who are very much against it politically, and also the fact that they're just saying they're just going off chasing money. And he's very much against it. So a lot of the younger golfers that have still yet to make their way in the PGA and playing these great tournaments, they're staying where they are. And as you can imagine, it's the older golfers coming towards the end of their career thinking, this is a huge payday for me, so I'm going to go over there.
I'm in the wrong job.
It's a ridiculous amount of money.
I'm in the wrong job.
Well, I'm thinking, I've already booked you golf lessons, and I'm thinking that maybe within 3 years...
Yeah, maybe I could turn it around.
Why not?
Why not?
It's got to be worth at least 50 million, surely.
Let's have a quick word about football before we let you go, Paul. Gareth Southgate's been talking about taking the knee in the Nations League.
Yeah, well, it's England-Germany tonight, and always that's always the huge fixture, isn't it, for both countries? I know this would be a fact. England have won it 17 times between the two. Germany have won it 15 times when we've played. There's the fact about the knee. Both teams are going to take the knee. There was the game against Hungary, which was really distasteful. There were 30,000 kids with parents that still managed to boo taking the knee. And the thing is, the Hungarian stadium was banned from having any spectators at all, but they managed to get round it by bringing kids in with parents. But anyway, Germany play England tonight, so they'll both be doing that. And also there's the worry that Gareth Southgate's been talking about, because whenever we talk about England-Germany, we end up talking about penalty shootouts, and it's also with the penalty shootout situation that happened in the World Cup. So racism always going to be a problem, but let's hope everything goes off fine tonight.
I hate booing in whatever walk of life.
I agree.
I hate
it's
it.
not very nice. Look, I'm not in tomorrow, Paul, because
you want your cash, don't you?
So you can pay your debt to me.
Cash.
No,
okay.
Yeah. I will see you on Thursday.
Right. Is there interest? It'll go up to £9.21.
Call it a tenner. Call it straight.
You got it. I'll see what I can do.
Drive's a hard bargain. Thank you, Paul. See you soon. Stay with us. We're going to take you through the papers with the broadcaster Liz Kershaw and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Moylan, after this quick break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back at 7:37. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour. And the Prime Minister is to meet with his cabinet later this morning as he seeks to move past the confidence vote. Boris Johnson has insisted that last night's victory was decisive and said that the government can now move on and focus on what really matters to the people.
President Zelensky has thanked Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to protect the lives of its people. It's as Russia continues to drive to capture the largest remaining Ukrainian-held city in Luhansk. President Zelensky says despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region.
Anyone who uses Apple phones will be able to edit and even unsend text messages in a new software update to be released later this year. The company have also announced an update to Apple Pay, which allows people to split the cost of a purchase into multiple instalments over a 6-week period.
Well, I can certainly see the advantage of unsending a text message.
We've all done it, haven't we? We've all done it.
Yes, those late-night text messages, ladies and gents.
Yeah. You might have heard some heckling from the wings there. Well, not heckling, some giggling, chortling. We're joined this morning by the former advisor to Boris Johnson and now Conservative Life peer in the House of Lords, Lord Daniel Moylan, and he's joined by the broadcaster and regular to this programme, Liz Kershaw, who I must say was the one chortling away to that. Daniel, can we start with you? Not call it a chortle.
Oh, sorry, miss.
No, I just want to explain where it came from.
She's like a head
Enjoyed
girl.
the heckling.
What did you do about... I accidentally phoned you yesterday. I didn't mean to phone you.
Did you?
Finger.
Yeah, my phone was trying to do something. The next minute, it's ringing Stephen Dixon. Now, that's all right, because you wouldn't be bothered.
No.
But it can be really embarrassing. I don't know. And I tried to work out how it had happened.
Oh, finger trouble.
Yeah.
Finger trouble. Let's talk cost of living, Daniel, should we, in the Express to kick off with, because whatever else is going on with pressures on the Prime Minister, if he wants to get back to business, as he says he does, cost of living has got to be top of the agenda, hasn't it?
You're absolutely right, and that's why I was drawing attention to this story, which is in today's Express, which is, Rishi, I'm confident we have the tools to bring down inflation. But the trouble is, and this is where the government has a real problem, if you read the story, there's actually almost nothing to it. I mean, he rightly says that you've got 3 tools you've got to use: fiscal policy, which is what the government spends in taxes, independent monetary policy, I'll come back to that, and then supply-side reform. The government isn't doing any of those the right way round. Let's start with the independent monetary policy. Gordon Brown gave the management of our money supply to the Bank of England to be run independently. We now have a governor of the Bank of England that appears in front of a Commons Select Committee and says, we're facing an apocalypse on inflation and I'm totally helpless. Exactly the reverse of what you'd expect to hear from a governor of the Bank of England. The blunt truth is that in order to address inflation, interest rates are going to have to rise. If that's what he means by saying strong independent monetary policy, A, if it's independent, what's he got to say about it? And B, is he actually talking about interest rate rises? Because unless we actually see those, to be honest, we're going to have to live with very high inflation. That's because we've printed so much money over the last few years. As far as the fiscal policy is concerned, however, he's been putting taxes up, whereas what we probably need is lower taxes on the fiscal policy side. So we're all the wrong way round. And he's right to talk about what he calls supply-side reform, which is basically, what that means is making it easier for businesses to do business and be entrepreneurial. But we haven't seen very much of it so far. We've seen a lot of government-led type economic activity, but taking the shackles off business and making them compete, we've seen which is tough, because businesses love it when the government comes along and says, oh, we're going to help you do this. But actually making them compete is something businesses don't really like. So there's an awful lot to do here, and there's no sign in this article that the Chancellor has really grasped what needs to be done, even though he's identified the right policy, the right instrument.
There's all this talk of a reshuffle, perhaps, to sort of consolidate cabinet. Do you think Mr Sunak's time might be over?
No, I have no idea about that. I've no idea if there'll be a reshuffle or what's going to happen in it. And I'm sure Rishi Sunak could be a great Chancellor, but he's got to get to grips, honestly, with the groupthink inside the Treasury. All they think about is the debt, when there's so much else we've got to think about in the economy and about stimulating growth. And he's got to learn the lessons from the past about how we do this, be honest about them and drive them through.
Well, all of this, Liz, ties into, I suppose, exactly what you want to cover inside the Mail, the fight back of the Tories, because what the Chancellor, with obviously the sign-off from the Prime Minister, decide to do on the cost of living crisis will be part of the record that Boris will be judged on.
Yeah, I mean, on the cost of living crisis, which is most people's main preoccupation, not interested in cake. I mean, immediately as the results came out last night about the Boris confidence vote, Lammy came on and started banging on about cake again, I just had to go to bed.
Yeah.
I was wound up. I didn't sleep in the bed. I thought, please, on the cost of living crisis, which Danny was talking about, the government's economic policy, everything that I was taught, I did economics at school, I did economics at university, everything I was taught was just thrown out the window. In order to reduce inflation, you take the money out of people's pockets so they can't go out and spend, you suppress demand, prices don't keep going up, demand and supply, price elasticity. It's not about that now, it's external forces like oil prices, food prices. We've got the Ukraine, the wheat basket of Europe, 74 tankers stuck in Odessa, can't get out because of Russian landmines and submarines. This year's crop will rot. That's going to push prices up. We're still overseas, people are actually going to starve to death. So it's nothing to do with the old style, put a penny on income tax or increase your mortgage payments every month and you'll stop going out buying sofas. It's bigger than that now. And I've not really heard any great ideas on that. So they've got to get to grips with that. They've got to get to grips with the price of oil, I mentioned this earlier, and petrol and gas and diesel, so you can run your van and go out to work.
Green levy, are we talking?
Oh, I'm coming on to that, Stephen. But I'm talking about the tax, the fuel duty, which they've slashed in other countries like Holland and France. And on top, it's compounding, it's a compound tax because the Chancellor, and he can't keep this going and stay fashionable, is actually putting VAT on fuel duty. So 88p out of every litre of petrol now is going straight to the Treasury. So stop patronising people by saying, we're going to give you £150 to help you through the winter when you've got a £2,800 fuel bill. Take it off at the pump. So where I filled up the other day, for instance, to be able to come here, it was £103. So let's have it be £52, get people out, get people working, being productive. These are the sort of conservative policies that people want to see.
What do you think, Daniel?
Well, I think I'm not as critical of the government for the emergency package they put in place to deal with the cost of living crisis, which I think, but it's a sticking plaster and an emergency package. They have to move on from, and it's welcome, but they have to move on from that to get the fundamental policies right that will address the inflationary crisis that we're facing. You know, it's very easy to think about inflation as rising prices, but you could also think about it as a fall in the value of money. And the only custodian of the value of money is the Bank of England. And they're not doing the right thing. The pound is going down. That makes imports even cheaper, even more expensive, and puts prices up. If they raised interest rates, the pound would rise, as other countries already are. The pound would rise, and it would actually help with inflation, and it would throttle a degree of demand, which I think is what we've got to do. And money has to be made. The value of money has to be restored, because that's what's actually happening. We've printed so much of it. Its value has gone down.
Don't you think we've already crushed demand? I mean, just personally, I think about going out, nipping into Milton Keynes.
We have to some extent, but you see, you're going to have... Inflation is going to continue if you have all this money washing about and you're not removing it to some extent from the system. Well, that's really what needs to be done.
What about the people who haven't got money washing about and have cut out every single luxury in life that you can think of?
Well, that's why I think you've got to use... This is where the fiscal policy comes in, what the government spends and what it takes. You need to stop worrying so much about the debt, which they're all obsessed about, and you need to think, how can we use fiscal policy in a targeted way, better targeted than the emergency package?
Which we're coming on to, yeah.
But in a targeted way to help people who are suffering while we get inflation out of the system through the only route we know that works, which is the use of monetary policy. And at the same time, taking the shackles off entrepreneurialism, or I'll put it another way, forcing businesses to be more entrepreneurial and compete.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that emergency package that announced a couple of weeks ago by Rishi Sunak, but was one of the reasons quoted yesterday by Jesse Norris that there was some dissatisfaction within the party, Jesse Norman, with the Prime Minister, that it wasn't a Conservative policy just to be handing out cash in sort of, willy-nilly to everybody. You want to talk about this article in the Daily Mail, page 18, second homeowners getting double energy rebate, and these are the sorts of things that need fixing.
Well, when this was announced, first of all, you're going to get rebates on your council tax, and then you're all going to get a fuel rebate, and you're going to get this and that, and it's not going to be means tested. So immediately people are saying, oh, hang on, the very richest in our country are going to get the same as the very poorest. Can that be right? And I came on this programme and told you how every winter my dad and his wife used to get the winter fuel allowance and go out and stock up on champagne. Was that rightly targeted? But I was thinking, wait a minute, because I own multiple houses, which I let out to young people who can't afford a deposit or the market rent, but I pay the bills. I'm not saying this to blow me on trumpet. It just occurred to me that I'd be getting like 5 council tax rebates and I'd be getting 5 fuel rebates. And I thought, is that right? Is that what's going to happen? And it's confirmed in this article that it is. And Daniel and I were discussing this, and he's got more of an inside track on how the Treasury, etc., works. And the fact is, he can confirm it, that they just have no idea how to distribute this because they don't have the data on who owns what and who pays what.
I mean, would there be that many people in that position?
There will be. But I mean, it's even if you just have a holiday home, it's going to happen. Yeah. It's just the same thing to me, similar as during the lockdowns, and we've now got billions of pounds of fraudulently claimed money by businesses and so the self-employed, which the Treasury's kind of shrugged off and said, we can't get it back, we're not going to bother. There's just so much money being pumped into the economy and printed that it's just really sloppy.
Well, you raised some interesting points. Love to know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We are out of time, I'm afraid to say.
Can we talk about the fat jab that I know you'd chosen to talk about in the next paper review? Yeah, save that one. We didn't have time to get to it, but it's in The Sun, and I really want to hear about that.
Because you're so fat, Isabel.
Well, I just think it's interesting. Handing out jabs to stop people being hungry. Let's talk about that in the next hour.
It is 7:50. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines. And the Prime Minister will meet his cabinet later on as he tries to move past the confidence vote last night. The Prime Minister insisting last night's victory was decisive and said the government can now move on and focus on what really matters to people.
Citizens Advice Scotland has warned that 62% more people are seeking help with their energy bills than last year. The charity added that around 20% of people regularly are running out of money before payday every month.
Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released a photo of their daughter Lilibet at her first birthday party. She's pictured at a picnic in the garden of the family's Windsor home and is smiling, wearing a blue dress and a bow in her lovely red hair.
Now, new data has revealed that utility bills soared by a third last month, and to help cope with the costs, more and more people are choosing to give up their online subscriptions. So is it possible for us to cut back and still enjoy the entertainment we love?
Well, we're joined by personal finance and consumer affairs commentator Georgie Frost. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you this morning. We put a survey out last night. 37.2% of people spend more than £30 a month on subscription services. Have we just clocked it up during lockdown?
Yes, we have clocked it up during lockdown, not just during lockdown as things have gone on. However, this year it looks like we are pulling back on subscription services. But when we think about subscription services, goodness me, in the past it was a gym membership and perhaps Gardener's World or something. Nowadays you think of Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime, but not just those. Things like coffee memberships that you can have, dating apps, chess, language apps on your phone. You can even have credit reference agencies every month. If there's something to be had, there's a subscription to be paid for. So it is a matter of cutting back, but it's a very interesting poll that you've got on your website.
Yeah, well, it is, because, I mean, less than £10 a month, 33%. But so it's, I mean, I'm really careful with these sort of things because I'm a northerner, so I hate spending.
Yeah, OK, yeah.
To be fair, I've got short arms and long pockets, haven't I, Isabel?
Well, they're saying that spending on digital content dropped by 5.7% in May because people are tightening their belts. Are people cancelling subscriptions then, or are they, you know, just deciding that there are sort of money-saving options out there? I mean, how can people tighten their belts digitally?
I think it's twofold. I mean, you've been speaking about the cost of living crisis. I do think people are identifying areas in their budget where they can cut back. One of the most obvious is subscriptions. And we've seen that. That's borne out in the facts. 1.5 million people cancelled these online subscription services in the first quarter of this year. But also I think there's a reality of, one, we don't have that much time in the day.
Yeah.
And when we signed up, you're right, during lockdown, you know, it made sense to stay at home and to watch because we had to. But nowadays, actually, some of the content that you're seeing is very samey. But there are ways, look, you can still enjoy these subscription services if you want to, but just be a bit savvy about it. The first thing I'd say, and really simply, is go through your bank account, work out what you're actually paying. It may sound a surprise, and I know you're a northerner, so this would never happen to you, but a lot of people forget they've signed up for these things.
Oh, this is me, 100%.
The way they get you in is a month's free trial, then you forget to cancel, and then by the time you've noticed, you're still paying for it months later, and you think, well, maybe I'll cancel next month's next. That's how they get you in. And actually, that's a really good way to save money, is use those free trials, but just remember to cancel. If you're likely to forget, put it in your phone to do so. If you know you really like something, for me, it's Disney+. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Pay annually. You can save yourself about £20 a year. Rotating is another really good way to do it. Do 1 month you can do monthly memberships, and they will allow you for Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, to pause your membership or to cancel if you're only paying by month. So then you can rotate it. That can save you £200 a year if you just spend the first month on Netflix. And by the time you've come back to Netflix or Amazon Prime, there's probably new content on there that you actually want to watch. Another big one, sharing as well. Now, I know we're going to see some crackdowns coming down the line. Netflix have lost, for the first time in a decade, viewers. So, of course, at account memberships, they are going to crack down on the fact that a quarter of account holders are sharing their account details with other people outside of their household. However, they haven't done it yet, so that's a good way, as long as you make it fair. But things like Spotify, for example...
Well, stick with the adverts on that, and then you don't have to subscribe, do you?
You can... You're absolutely right. Look, if you don't watch it that often, many of these services will offer basic memberships or premium memberships. Netflix is a good example. $6.99 for the basic, $15.99 for the premium. Do you need the premium? Cut back and save yourself
Let's
£50
be
a year.
honest, how many of us can watch all that is out there? We don't need all the subscriptions. It's just it's the luxury, I suppose, we can probably afford to live without in some cases. Georgie Frost, that's all we've got time for. Lovely to get your advice. Thank you very much indeed for coming in with all of that.
Stay with us. We've got lots more coming up, including the very latest on the PM in just a couple of minutes.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers. One departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon, fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland. It is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
The Prime Minister survives a vote of confidence in his leadership, vowing to deliver for Britain as he convenes Cabinet today.
Good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock on Tuesday, June the 7th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen, and this is what we've got for you today.
The Prime Minister will convene Cabinet this morning in an attempt to move on from last night's vote of confidence that saw 4 in 10 of his own MPs vote to remove him. Speaking after the vote, the PM hailed the result as extremely good and decisive.
In response, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the result was grotesque and said the Conservative Party had ignored the British people by keeping Boris Johnson in power.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky has used his nightly address to thank the Prime Minister for providing Kyiv with exactly the weapons that it needs. The UK has provided the country with long-range missile systems after Russia launched renewed strikes on the capital.
And to cheer you up this morning, or possibly not, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a picture of their daughter Lilibet as they celebrated her first birthday during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Can't fail to be cheered by that. Let us know your thoughts.
You've got to be very hard-hearted.
Heart of stone if you don't find that adorable. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Let us know your thoughts, or you can tweet us at GB News.
And we've been talking about subscriptions this morning and what you need to cut back on to save money. Well, if you subscribe to us on the GB News channel on YouTube,
it's free.
Absolutely free. Doesn't cost you a penny, and you get all the latest on the big stories that everyone's talking about.
So our top story this morning, the Prime Minister has survived a vote of confidence in his leadership.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
Well, in a speech after the vote, a defiant Prime Minister called the result decisive and vowed to move on and deliver for Britain.
And what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joins us from number 10 Downing Street this morning. Good morning to you, Tom. The Prime Minister, in his usual ebullient form last night, vowing to move on. Is he going to be able to?
Well, that's the question on everyone's lips, and the question to which there is no clear answer at this stage. Certainly a victory for the Prime Minister last night, but a qualified one. 148 of his own MPs declaring they have no confidence in his leadership. How will he win back their support? How will he get the ship of the Conservative Party back upright? That is a significant question, and one which he has to answer in pretty short order. It's only 3 weeks until two twin by-elections on the 23rd of June, one up in the north in Wakefield and one down in the southwest in Tiverton. Two areas, one representing, if you like, the blue wall, these Conservative Lib Dem facing seats, one representing the red wall, these Conservative Labour facing seats. Twin challenges that the Prime Minister no doubt will come up against fairly soon. Will he be able to right his ship before then is a significant question. And the problem for the Prime Minister, really, when we're looking at the dissent within his party over the last 24 hours, is it doesn't come from one particular direction. You've got people certainly on the left, you've got people who are opposed to Brexit, who've never liked the Prime Minister, who have big problems with his leadership and perhaps more exercised by whether or not he was standing around the cabinet room table with a cake and maybe holding a can of Estrella. And then you've got people on the potentially the right of the Conservative Party who think that this is a party that has lost its way, that have U-turned too many times, that has got addicted to splashing taxpayer money at every problem that it comes across. How you bridge that gap, how you win back both sides of the party is a tricky circle to square. And indeed, looking at what the Prime Minister has been saying this morning ahead of the Cabinet meeting, which is to start in a few minutes' time, the Prime Minister has been trumpeting the tens of billions of pounds he has been spending, the 37 billion that has gone on the cost of living crisis. Is that a way to win back fiscal Conservatives? Is that a way to persuade people who are worried about the impact of inflation, splashing yet more cash? Potentially not. But certainly the numbers last night give the Prime Minister a bit, not a lot, but a bit of breathing space. He won by a higher percentage of the vote than Margaret Thatcher did in 1990, albeit a lower percentage of the vote than Theresa May did back in 2018. She only survived another few months, but of course in between that confidence vote and her resigning, of course, was the European elections in which Theresa May came fifth behind every other major party, even the Green Party at that stage, on 9% of the vote. So clearly some challenges for the Prime Minister ahead, but also perhaps some opportunities. Will the Prime Minister be able to get the ship back upright? Will he be able to cast a more steady course, stop the U-turns, potentially become more conservative? Would that be a way by which he would be able to steer back to clearer waters? Well, that remains to be seen.
It does indeed. Tom, thank you. Let's talk to the Deputy Editor at The Spectator, Freddie Gray, who's here in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is Tom right when he says, this perhaps gives the Prime Minister a little bit of breathing room?
Yes, he's perhaps right. Certainly there's a little bit of wiggle room there. But I think overall the news is not good. The picture does not look good for Boris. The Partygate scandal will dog him for some time to come. I don't see any clear way out of it. He is obviously an extremely skilled politician, extremely skilled campaigner when it comes to elections, so there's always the potential for him to turn it round. And, of course, there is the big question of, if not Boris, who? And the Tories have no good answer. I think what's interesting is the Tories still seem to be willing to tear themselves apart, even though they don't have a good answer.
Is this? I mean, how much is this about Partygate, and how much about the Conservative Party direction at the moment? Because when it comes to whatever you think about Partygate, he's had a fine. The Sue Gray report's out. It's done and dusted. I mean, there's nothing. You can't resolve it. There's nothing that can be done now.
Well, Partygate is the above-ground reason for this crisis. The subterranean reason, the bigger reason, is the cost of living crisis that a lot of Tory MPs know will hurt them. And there's a lot of anger out there, and rightly so, about the cost of living crisis. The government doesn't seem to have a firm grip on the economy. And I think the worry for a lot of Tory MPs is they could be facing a real thrashing. And they don't know if Boris can lead them out of that. But they don't also have anyone else.
What's the landscape look like in the short term? I mean, there's been some speculation that there might be some resignations, there might be some reshuffles. We can expect, of course, this by-election to be very difficult for the Prime Minister. And indeed, we've got this parliamentary inquiry into whether or not he misled Parliament. Short term, at least, looks a little bit bumpy.
I think short term is bumpy. I think we're in a state of sort of turbo paralysis. Where the government will just carry on going from sort of crisis to crisis. We'll end up still talking about Partygate, even though nobody wants to, for several weeks ahead. Boris said yesterday he didn't want politicians to dance to the media's tune. I think that's a bit like, with Tories certainly, it's a bit like asking a sort of bunch of drunks in a pub not to drink. It's not possible. The media does call the tune. So he needs to find a way of getting around that, and I don't clearly see how he does it.
There's something... I mean, look, I know it's how politics works, but there's something a bit off, I think, when you look at it and say a lot of these... As you point out, a lot of these politicians are doing what they do, voting how they vote, simply because they want to save their own skin.
Yes. Well, it's revolting, isn't it? Politics is revolting. And, I mean, I find it very, very funny watching sort of some of these Tory MPs who have absolutely no honourability at all, no honour at all, talking about, how we need an honourable figure, we need someone, and, they're all backstabbing snakes, or at least most of them are.
Crikey, I mean, is that fair? There are a lot of people who would be at home thinking there's people who are there in public office who have lots of integrity.
I think
it's a bit of a wide, a bit of a sweeping.
There's the odd exception.
I think when you look at the behaviour of a lot of the Tory rebels recently in particular, you do see that they summon up honour when it suits them. And when they don't need to, they can be backstabbing. And I think politics has always been, there's no point pretending it's a pretty business. It's not.
I think that's probably a fair conclusion to end on. Thank you very much, Freddie Gray from
pleasure.
The Spectator. Let's bring in James Crouch, who is Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Opinion Research. What are the polls looking like for this morning for Boris Johnson? Is there going to be a bounce back after this?
Well, the polls are not good reading for Boris Johnson this morning. So we conducted a snap poll yesterday morning, and had the public been voting instead of Conservative MPs, he'd be out of a job by a margin of 2-1. So that's the kind of scale of the challenge that he's got to overcome. Ultimately, Labour Party has been in the lead for around 6 months now. His ratings are really quite dire. So if he is going to get out of this, as Freddie says, it's pretty difficult to see how.
I mean, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because although, the ratings are good, the Labour Party isn't doing as well as perhaps they should be at this stage.
That is definitely true. It is actually quite remarkable that even though the Labour Party has been in the lead, the Conservative Party hasn't been that far behind them, but it's because they've actually been outperforming their leader by quite some margin. Now, the question is, how long does that last? How long does the Conservative Party brand outlast the damage that the Prime Minister may or may not be doing to that brand? That remains to be seen.
It's interesting, Freddie Gray was saying there that, unfortunately, he predicts we'll be talking about Partygate for some time to come, even though none of us wants to be talking about it. How much of a turn-off is all of this? Is politics in general now to the general public? How much has this whole saga really made people sort of say a plague on both your houses?
Well, I think from the Prime Minister's perspective, his ratings took an absolute nosedive in January, and the really scary thing is they haven't really improved. So they haven't really moved, and he hasn't got anyone back on side. And 6 months on, that's quite extraordinary. So it means from his point of view, we're going to keep talking about it because he remains unpopular. From the Labour Party's perspective, it's just not yet a credible or attractive alternative yet. So actually, when you look at the Conservative Party ratings, and especially Boris Johnson's, they don't look great. You look at Keir Starmer's and Labour parties, well, they don't look fantastic either. So it just means that, well, they're not in a position to actually take over government. But the Conservative Party look like they're doing a decent job at trying to lose it, at least for the moment.
Look, I've got to ask you, Freddie, in all of this, this is a golden opportunity, actually, isn't it, for the Prime Minister to start showing the people some carrot, in terms of lower taxes, work on the fuel duty, on the green levy, all these sort of things which actually people have been calling for. Starts delivering some of that, his popularity is going to go up.
I think possibly. There's an escape route there for him. The problem is he needs a useful economic global situation, which he doesn't have. The global economy is fraught with terrible, terrible problems, which look like they're only going to get worse. Against that backdrop, I'm struggling to see how he pulls it round. I don't put anything past him, but at the moment I struggle to see how he does.
And James Crouch, we heard the Prime Minister last night, straight after the results of the confidence vote, saying that he wasn't going to be calling any snap election. Do you think that that's true? And if an election was called in the immediate future, how would it go?
Well, we all know what happened last time a Prime Minister called a snap election without a very, very clear reason to. So I think he'd be wise to not attempt that. Also, all of the polling evidence isn't fantastic either, and unless he really thinks he's got something up his sleeve, it wouldn't be wise to. But I think the problem is that actually there is no clear plan out of this, and if the Prime Minister did have a clear plan out of it, he wouldn't need to call that snap election because he'd be able to get on top of the challenges that are currently facing the government.
OK. Look, it's fascinating stuff, talking it through in a way that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily do. James Crouch, Freddie Gray, thank you both very much indeed.
Well, let's head now to Uxbridge. That is, of course, Boris Johnson's constituency, and our London reporter's been getting some reaction to last night's vote. Good morning to you, Alice. What are people saying there?
Good morning. Yes, I was in Uxbridge actually yesterday before the vote, and I'm back here this morning speaking to people all about it. And I have to say, there's still a lot of support there for the Prime Minister, and in some ways that's actually not surprising. I mean, this has been a very safe Tory seat ever since it was created in 2010. And I think it's important to stress that even if the Prime Minister had lost last night's vote, he still would have stayed on for the MP for Uxbridge and Ruislip. So it wouldn't have been a change there. But I think still, when I've been speaking to people out and about on the street, there's still a lot of support for him, but many of them are saying that they believe his days are numbered.
In the beginning, when he started, he was doing some good things, but now he's doing a lot of mistakes, and I think this COVID or this lockdown party was the last mistake for me. He should be what's the word, dismissed, or should be removed, but they gave a board to stay. But I think he will not stay for long or all in the elections. Probably he will not win the next elections.
I think it's very doubtful that he can survive this. I really do, because he, there's too many voting against him for him to be a credible leader anymore. The party's obviously disunited at the moment. And
I think he let the country down, and at the time that everyone who stayed at home, and they were trying to protect each other by isolating themselves. He was partying, and a lot of people, they say, okay, vaccination and everything, but that's not all. He just let people down completely, because he was encouraging people not to go out, but at the same time he was partying, and it's just unbelievable.
So Boris Johnson's still got your vote?
Always. If they try and get him out, I will not vote at all. I won't vote for Lib Dems, Green Party, Labour, definitely not Labour anyway, or even Tories then. No. They have a mandate to get rid of somebody they don't like. It's all about like and dislike. All right, he does stretch the truth a bit, but all of them do.
That was some people in Uxbridge speaking to me this morning. So you can still see there's quite a variety of opinion there. But one thing that actually did strike me when I was speaking to some people yesterday is the frustration that many of them have had with him as a local MP. And I suppose that's some of the challenges, I guess, of when your local MP is also their Prime Minister. Many of them saying we have barely seen him around the streets, coming to hustings. A lot of people really frustrated about that and saying he's obviously too preoccupied, particularly when there's scandals in Westminster with Partygate and things like that. But I suppose the real concern could be that Boris Johnson, he's lucky that there isn't a general election for a couple of years, but it's very easy to focus on the national politics that are going on in the country. But remember that the people in this area will also be the ones voting for him. And if he doesn't do enough to win back their support here, it could be a problem when it hits them in the ballot box.
Could be. Alice, thank you. I mean, it's all that thing, I think, when you are the Prime Minister or Leader of the Opposition or whatever it may be, when you've got a very big role in the House of either government or the Houses of Parliament, then how do you keep your constituents happy?
Yeah, you don't lose your constituency because then you can't be Prime Minister anymore.
Yeah.
Look, the time is 8:18. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. President Zelensky has thanked Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to protect the lives of its people. It's as Russia continues its drive to capture the largest remaining Ukrainian-held city in Luhansk. Zelensky says despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region.
The government's being urged to increase investment into long COVID research. The Royal College of Nursing warned that patients are suffering under what they call a postcode lottery in care as diagnosis and treatment vary hugely across the UK.
Citizens Advice Scotland has warned that 62% more people are seeking help with their energy bills than last year. The charity added that around 20% of people regularly run out of money before payday each month.
At 8:19, a very big hello to Tony in Sheffield this morning. Tony, I've known many people like you over the years. I used to be a bit like that myself, but I don't drink anymore. He's a pensioner in Sheffield and says, one of my few pleasures in life is a few beers of an evening down my local. My usual intake is 6 or 7 pints, but because my domestic bills are increasing, I may have to reduce my intake or possibly cut down on eating.
Oh.
I've probably cut down on the beer rather than eating. It would be a good idea if someone could open up the equivalent of food banks for those of us who enjoy the therapeutic benefits of a few glasses of ale. Bring on the beer banks. Wishful thinking, Tony. Wishful thinking. But you never know.
Lots of views coming in on Boris Johnson winning that confidence vote last night. Phil says, I believe Boris Johnson's basically OK, like a wonky supermarket trolley. He carries a load well, but needs a bit of work to stop it crashing into the shelves. Doesn't deserve being dumped in the canal, though.
Yeah, Jeff in Rotherham says Boris has lost the silver vote by taking away the triple lock for pensioners. And Jill says, I want to know how my MPs voted on this. I voted Conservative, and if my MP voted against Boris, I expect an explanation.
Yeah, Archie says those MPs who voted against should have the whip withdrawn. Was an anonymous vote, though, so at the moment that's not going to happen.
No. And I don't know, if they had the whip withdrawn, that then is pushing them in one direction, isn't it? It's meant to be sort of a free and fair ballot as far as that goes. But, I mean, I can understand your frustration. On pest control this morning, some weird pests about, because Wendy in Canterbury's been in touch and says, my 90-year-old neighbour, who's a keen gardener, has got some foxholes in her lawn, but she's also having to clear up dirty nappies and men's underwear.
Oh.
Nobody has claimed the latter. What's going on in Canterbury, Wendy?
Bob in Sheffield says, we have foxes in an urban part of Sheffield. They've stolen the eggs delivered by our milkman. I'm also aware that some pet rabbits have been killed by foxes. Not a pretty sight for the children who discovered them.
Well,
Interesting, though, we spoke to that zoologist a little bit earlier on in the programme who said that foxes kill several rats a day.
6 rats a night.
Which is really good at keeping the rodent population down, particularly in urban areas. I didn't know that.
No, Kevin says, I'm actually delighted that foxes are recovering and adapting to our invasive lifestyles. Oh, you're right, it is our invasive lifestyles that cause the problem. It's great to hear that urban foxes are doing so well. We have a few that visit our garden. Try and look on the positive side. I mean, I know you suffer from the screeching
the noisy
and
foxes.
the mating and all that sort of thing.
But they are pretty. I do like, because one of the joys of getting up at the early hours that we do is we get lots of sightings of foxes in the morning. It's a real treat in London to see a bit of wildlife. You don't see much. It's squirrels and foxes, and that's about your lot. Maybe a few magpies here and there. Look, keep your views coming in. They keep us entertained all morning. We love to hear what you think. We are the People's Channel after all. And don't go anywhere, because we've got lots more coming up.
Yes, are you avoiding the dentist's chair because of the bill you might get at the end of it? We'll be getting all the tips on keeping your teeth healthy and your costs down. That's in a couple of minutes.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers, one departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon, fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland. It is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:27. Still to come on this morning's programme as a new survey reveals the mental health struggles of police officers. We'll be meeting two coppers who say surf therapy can actually help to ease the pressure experienced by the force. We'll be speaking to them at around 8:45.
Now, as he stood by the Prime Minister yesterday, Tory MP Greg Smith tells us why Boris Johnson is ready to carry on with the job at hand. That's just after 9.
And remember, you can join in any of our discussions. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
I'm just opening a bit of post.
Oh, are you? Don't mind me.
Someone sent me it's a wedding congratulations card.
Oh, gosh, it's a long one.
It's a long one. From Sue and family. Thank you very much. You written a lot in there. I shall read it in more detail when I get it. Thank you. That's very, very kind.
In case he hasn't mentioned, he's newly married. It's very exciting. What is it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
3 weeks on Thursday.
Gosh, very newly married. It's very exciting. Right, we're going to talk about dentistry now.
Yes, because I can smile because my teeth are very nice.
You've got a beautiful smile. I've always thought that. New figures this week suggest that the cost of living crisis is actually contributing to, wait for it, the deterioration of the nation's oral health.
Oh, it's no surprise. It's expensive, isn't it? A quarter of us are now thought to have cut back on dental hygiene products to pay for heating and electricity.
Well, we're joined by the singing dentist, Dr. Milad Shadru. Very good morning to you. Lots of people will be familiar with your work, not least your dentistry, but also your singing, your dancing eyebrows went viral during lockdown. You've been so good at getting the nation brushing their teeth, particularly little ones as well. But in reality, this is a huge problem, particularly for those who are really stretched at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's kind of what the NHS service is supposed to be there for, to help. And we know that's very stretched at the moment. It's incredibly difficult to find a dentist, to get a position at an NHS clinic. So the preventative measures that we need to take are super important. They're important at all times, but especially now. And as you mentioned, obviously, the cost of living is going up. Investing in your mouth is going to, sadly, have to take a bit of a backseat for a lot of people. But the prevention element should never suffer as a result of it, because there is a saying that dentistry isn't expensive, neglect is. And that's where we can do a lot to prevent the problems in the first place.
All right, can I start off then by asking about toothpaste?
Yes.
Because every time I go to the supermarket and I look at the toothpaste, I'm always astounded that some is just so expensive now. Now, are you better off buying these fancy sort of brands that do all sorts, or your basic toothpaste that's half the price? Is it as good? Does it do the same stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. The basic paste can still do the protection and the prevention elements that we need. So fluoride is the active ingredient that we need that helps to protect our teeth. It helps to stop tooth decay from developing. It remineralizes the surface of the tooth if it's had a slight bit of damage. So any toothpaste that has fluoride in it is going to do the prevention job. And even on the way in today, I was looking. You can get a good tube by a reputable brand that everyone knows for under £2. Right. And that would last you over a month. Even a toothbrush you can get for £1. So really, £3 a month to brush your teeth twice a day, that would help a lot. And that's going to prevent you spending a lot more money on curative treatments.
What about mouthwash? I mean, I like using them just because it makes my mouth taste and feel clean and fresh, even more so than just brushing your teeth. But aren't some of the most effective ones actually quite disgusting in taste? I mean, is that correct? Would you say that the most effective one's probably not the yummiest?
So, not the yummiest.
That's the technical term.
Mouthwash companies out there make yummy mouthwash. So mouthwashes are great as an adjunct to what you're already doing. So a lot of times, sadly, people use them as a replacement. So they won't clean in between their teeth or floss or brush effectively for 2 minutes twice a day. So I just use mouthwash, bruv, which doesn't do the job. Yeah. It's a good extra thing, and some of the, sadly, not tasty good ones, they are good for specific things. So mouthwash is good for targeting certain things, sensitivity, gum disease, if you want extra protection against cavities, it's good to add that in, but never to use that to substitute just basic good oral care.
In terms of investment, I know people, times are very tough, but is it financially sensible to invest in a checkup, whether it's every 6 months or every year, rather than just leave it, think you'll save the money and end up with a whacking great bill later on?
Absolutely, nailed it on the head. It's like a false economy to not do the kind of preventative business, like your car. If you never serviced your car, if you never replaced the brake pads, the oil, eventually the car's going to break down, and then you can't get mad at the mechanic when he tells you it's going to cost thousands of pounds to fix your car. Same with your mouth. You can do stuff, and again, it doesn't have to be expensive. Even one checkup a year average figures in the UK, even if you go private, it's about £60. So, yes, that's still a lot of money for a lot of people, but one treatment is more than that. And if you can prevent that treatment, it's going to be better for you in the long run.
The cynic in me thinks you take your car to the mechanic and they're looking for some work to do because that's how they make their money. And is that also the case with dentists? I mean, I don't want to denigrate your profession, but there is always a sense that they're always looking for some work to do because that's, you know, how they earn, especially in the private practice now.
So that comes with trust and comes with rapport and comes with you having a good dentist that a lot of the time dentists were always, you know, the same person you used to see, unlike your GP where you see someone different every time, the dentist becomes your family dentist. And I've been in the same clinic for 18 years now. I've got generations that have come through, and you build that relationship with people that we're not there to find work. We're there to report on it, tell you what we see, provide you with all of the options, and then it's really up to you to decide what you want to do. But the best dentistry is no dentistry. The cheapest dentistry is no dentistry. So if you're looking after your teeth, you're just going to prevent problems and prevent big bills.
Yeah, well, that's the way forward. Bilal, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much. You have got a beautiful smile.
Thank you. So do you.
Well, yeah, but so you should. I always think with dentists, if they don't have nice teeth, they probably might not be the best dentist.
Yeah. Good thing I'm not a hairdresser.
You do get a lot of bald hairdressers, a lot of bald barbers, don't you?
The beard makes up for it, the upside down
It's
head.
a very strong beard. Anyway, we must move on. Lovely to see you as always. Thank you.
Has there been a touch of just for what's it?
No comment. Is it to go, is it? Come on.
They look very dark, suspiciously dark.
No, it looks
We don't dye our hair,
How
do we?
dare you? How dare you? Look, stay with us. We're going through the papers in just a moment. I'm joined by the broadcaster Liz Kershaw and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Moylan. All of them. Plenty of hair.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 8:36 morning to you. Let's go through the papers now with former advisor to Boris Johnson, a Conservative peer, Lord Daniel Moylan, and broadcaster extraordinaire Liz Kershaw. Good morning, Liz. We'll kick off with you, should we? Looking at the PM this morning, how he's getting on, what his rivals are saying.
Yeah, I'll be careful on this one because there was a famous episode on the Today programme on Radio 4 where this particular politician, his name was mixed up.
Yes.
I'm talking about Jeremy Hunt.
Well done.
And his naked ambition. People said to me, Liz, you've been on the radio 35 years. How come you're still there? And I always say it's because I love the content. I love what I do. As I love politics and coming on here, I never set out to be powerful or famous. And I think I always say the public can hear that and they can detect the people that are just pushy and ambitious and the people that really love their subject. Well, I'd put Hunt into the category of ruthlessly ambitious. He went up against Boris Johnson last time there was a leadership election in the Conservative Party. He didn't win. It's quite clear his cynical attempts to become Prime Minister again, and we're just not having it. You know, we're just not having it.
So you and Nadine Dorries are joined in this view?
I've got a lot of time for Nadine. Anyway, I'd like now to get not hysterical, but historical, and there are precedents for this. So let's go back to 49 BC, the Roman Empire, and Julius Caesar, and the famous assassination. You know, depicted by Kenneth Williams in Carry On Cleo.
That's one way to look at that.
Infamy, they've all got it
infamy.
Well, there's Julius Caesar, and he's trooping round Gaul, France, and the Senate says, right, come on now, Julius, your work's done. And he defies them, and he crosses the Rubicon, the famous expression, a river. Anyway, he got stabbed in the back, front, legs, shoulders. And there are three reasons that are claimed for that. See if they ring any bells. First of all, he really angered the Senate, House of Commons.
Yeah.
The people lost trust in him.
Right.
Hello? And thirdly, he tried to become a sort of, you know, a king figure, and it just didn't wash. So anyway, everybody ganged up on him. He got stabbed 23 times, and his attackers had a statue made of him in wax, which was put up in the middle of Rome. And the public saw it, and they didn't like it. They quite literally violently objected to the fact that the Senate had carried this out without the consent of the people. I just, you know, place it before you as a
offering,
as a metaphor, and I think it led to riots, and eventually, consequently, the downfall of the Roman Republic. So I think MPs have to be very careful about what they do and about ignoring
the people.
The people, and at least, as I said in the last segment, let us know how you voted, guys.
Yeah, that's a fair
I
point.
don't think they will, but it's a fair challenge to them. And Boris Johnson's a big fan of his classics, I'm sure, well into that story, or maybe not. Lord Moylan.
I think this has given us a tremendous excursion into a very interesting and relevant historical parallel. There is a right way to remove a Prime Minister that the people don't have confidence in, and that's through a general election, not through a sort of sordid party coup. But as I say, if you're going to hold a vote and you call for a democratic vote and you hold it, the very least you do, I'd thought, is respect the outcome of it and not go around saying, oh, we can, you know, we're going to carry on fighting. I think the Conservative Party is in dangerous territory of losing, you know, the idea that, I mean, Jeremy Hunt is a nice man and he's an intelligent man, but the idea that you have Jeremy Hunt as your main candidate to replace Boris is what you're saying to the voters, the party members who chose Boris, is, oh, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. And it's all this, you know, you got it wrong, we were always right attitude, which I think has poisoned politics now over the last 6 or 7 years. And members of Parliament need to understand they don't always get it right. And they need to, you know, work with a party that doesn't keep together in politics is a party that fails. And the idea that you got rid of Mrs. Thatcher, it was 20 years for the party to get over that. You get rid of Boris, you're plunging the Conservative Party into division for years and years to come.
Although
there are lots of people who will never accept that this was the right way to get rid of Boris. That is, to call a vote, to lose it, and then carry on undermining him. They just won't accept that.
But do you think that that division is only there if you get rid of Boris? I mean, I would argue that there's a lot of division remaining in the parliamentary party this morning, even though he's safe for the next year.
I think what's happened is, if you give me a moment, is that there's been a change in what the subjects of political debate are. We used to have a spectrum that ran on an economic line from free markets through to socialism, and you positioned yourself somewhere on that line. And a lot of Conservative MPs are still very comfortable on that. But actually, over the last 10 years, the debate, the topics we discuss have changed, and they're much more to do with identity, immigration, and things like that. A lot of MPs don't find themselves comfortable, Conservative MPs, indeed Labour MPs, on that sort of spectrum. And they're out of sync with what the voters want. And the Labour Party sort of tried to confront this over Brexit, totally got it wrong, and their punishment was the humiliation of the 29 election. So far, the Conservative Party's never really had to confront it because, oh, we won the election, 80-seat majority, we walk on water, why do we need to think about ourselves and our future? But now it's really confronting them. And there are a lot of MPs who are just not happy with modern politics. And I think that they're going to have to really reconsider whether they belong in a Conservative Party that is listening to the people or a Conservative Party which is constantly stumbling back into their Cameronian comfort zone. That's not to knock David Cameron, who might have been the right guy for the time, but the times have changed.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
Can I just quickly add, I think the Labour Party has to rethink itself as well, because it's not what it says on the tin anymore. It's not the party of the working classes, the labourers. It's now the party of people who are dependent on the state for valid reasons in some cases, many cases, and the public sector, and hard-working families just about managing all the phrases that have been trotted out, where both parties in a couple go to work and they've got kids and they want a foreign holiday, they don't see Labour representing them. And they lent the votes to the Tories, and the Tories have got to serve them better now.
Yeah. Daniel, because we've been tempted by this in our list all morning. It's in the Sun. It's an injection to help people lose 4 stone.
Yeah, well, here we have hunger-busting jabs help the obese shed 4 stone. Now, both Liz and I have got a personal perspective on this. We have to confess here.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, I went on a diet, and I did lose nearly 5 stone.
Well
and
done.
Liz, I've got her permission to say this, around the same time, though we didn't know this, went on a diet, different diet, and she lost 3 stone. And we did it, both of us, without surgical...
And kept it off.
And kept most of it off. Most of it in my case, all of it in her case, I'm sure. And we did it without surgical interventions, and we did it without hunger-busting jabs. So we're beginning to feel a little bit cheated, the pair of us. Now you can get these jabs, these injections, that help you solve your weight problems. And it's a study only. It had 2,500 people, tubby adults, as the Sun says. And it's meant to help, of course, cut the number of people suffering from type 2 diabetes as a result of obesity. So I suppose we ought to welcome it, even though
the problem is I'm pretty sure everyone will be clamouring for a jab.
Everyone will be clamouring
even if
for
they're
it.
not 4 stone overweight.
No, and maybe they, if they had to pay for it rather than expecting everything free on the NHS, then that might actually make them think harder about actually keeping the weight off.
Oh, maybe. I think it's a very tempting idea. Just a quick look in the Star, Liz, at Robbie Williams, who apparently quite fancies being Sir Robbie.
Yeah, this is in all the papers today because he's bringing out an album of orchestral versions of his songs. The thing is, I spotted this and thought, he is around. He has got something to promote. Because I sat there on Saturday night watching the party at the Palace and thought, where is Robbie Williams? Where are many of our biggest stars? This is a showcase. Billions of people around the world are going to be watching this. One of our finest cultural achievements is popular music since the 1950s. We've exported it around the world, sold millions of albums. Led Zeppelin, the second biggest British act of all time after the Beatles. Robert Plant still got a fantastic voice. He could have pitched up and done something. It would have been, putting the spotlight on our culture, which is it's absolutely indispensable for soft power around the world. I mean, I've been in the African bush, I've been in the deep south of the swamps of Louisiana, and people have said, where are you from? And as soon as I've told them, they say, oh, did you know the Beatles? Because they think it's the same. And just everywhere you go around the world. And it's also an incredible revenue earner. as is film, video games, our creative industries. This is why I've got a lot of time for Nadine Dorries. Jeremy Hunt was DCMS person at one time and moved on, but Nadine's really getting stuck in. But we have an incredible thing in this country which is unique to us, not least because it's in the English language, and whether other countries like it or not, that is a dominant language. And so Saturday night, to me, we should have had Robbie Williams on. Instead of playing Kool and the Gang Celebration, you know, and stuff like that.
Alicia Keys, New York. I didn't understand that.
Really, I thought, she's not going to do New York.
I know.
She kind of apologised for it. Diana Ross at the end, you know. Where was Shirley Bassey? I think she can still belt
One Direction.
Yeah, One Direction. Massive. If you look in the charts, Tom
Jones.
Tom, we
were saying
discussed
that
Tom
in my
Jones.
house, yeah.
In the top 10 this week, Harry Styles has got 3 singles. You know, who put that list of artists? It was not representative.
Most of it was amazing, but I did think that, I do have to say, I did miss a few British acts in there, but the whole spectacle in itself was amazing.
No, the spectacle was fantastic. The lighting was fantastic. The atmosphere, the morale-boosting element of it was all fantastic. But as I'm so keen on music and I had a keen ear for it and I see it, obviously, I was thinking, it should have. It is a missed opportunity. Oh, and not just from the UK, the Commonwealth. We could have had bands from Jamaica. We could have had bands from certain African countries. You know, it could have been a showcase to the world of British and Commonwealth music.
Yeah, could well have been.
We're sort of ashamed of. I know Saturday night was a triumph, but we're kind of still embarrassed about.
Maybe the fees are too high. Who knows how much they were?
Oh, they'd have flogged his new album. They'd have done it for nothing.
Yeah. Liz, Daniel, thank you both very much indeed. Appreciate it. Now, concerns have been raised about the well-being of police officers after recent figures show that mental health absences amongst Scottish policemen and policewomen have risen by 22% in the last 5 years.
But this is an issue that affects all officers, and we're joined now by the Scottish Police Federation Chairman David Hamilton, whose organisation is responsible for the findings. Tell us about these new statistics and the reason for these absences, then.
Good morning. I think what we've had is a reporting of a 22% increase over the last 5 years. That's over 1,300,000 working days lost due to mental health illnesses in Scotland. And what I can confidently say, having spoken to colleagues across the UK and indeed across the world, I'm actually at an international policing conference today in Glasgow, and this is replicated all across the globe, frankly. And the reason for that is that policing is very much that service of last resort. It's where people come to when everything else fails, and people retreating back into their own core business. And police officers are left having to essentially pick up pieces and help members of the community. So what we're seeing today is just further evidence of that pressure that's been put on policing and on the impact it's having on individual police officers.
We rely very much on the police, rightly so, but I mean, there's got to be a lot of things that officers go through that we just cannot imagine.
There are, and you know, I think this is a complex mix here. So there is the traumatic experiences that we have to deal with, and the types of things that we have to see, smell, hear. You know, it's all very traumatic at times. But there are also other aspects of this, and that's the interruption to people's lives. Police officers don't get the chance because of they work shifts, because of the fact that courts don't work shifts. They often have rest days interrupted, leave interrupted, and that inability to get away from the job is what's really causing so many problems just now. People are burning out because they don't get the chance or don't get to the chance to process the things which they're seeing, and that have a direct impact on mental health.
And you can, as you describe it, you can understand why. David Hamilton, Chairman of the Scottish Police Federation, thank you so much for enlightening on all of that. But on this whole subject, I want to bring in now two serving police officers. They've both attempted to try and address this mental health crisis within the force. They've set up a Surfwell organisation, which has been formally trialled by the police to try and help staff who are struggling with mental health.
Well, James Mallows and Sam Davies from Surfwell join us now. Good to see you this morning, gents. Tell us what Surfwell is.
So Surfwell was started a few years ago by myself and James. It's basically a enhanced peer support program to tackle this exact issue that we're talking about now.
What does enhanced peer support actually look like in real life?
So we've built on a lot of science. The key thing is there's a lot of stuff in the media about cold water immersion, being in the cold, and kind of experiencing lots of different physiological changes that happen when all that goes on. So what we've sought to do is to put some of that science in place and to understand what happens at the magic point that all that starts to unfold in the water. And at the moment that happens, there's a police officer or a member of police staff stood next to you who goes through the same issues that you do and understands those same problems. So our participants are able to open up and talk about stuff much, much quicker, and often in much, much deeper terms. So it gives them a good kind of springboard to talk about things and for us to then refer them into other areas.
Interesting, because when we think about servicemen and women, you know, who go off to theatres of war, we're used to hearing about PTSD and the problems with veterans and support for them and the charities surround that, Help for Heroes and the like. But perhaps sometimes we don't think about it in relation to police officers who don't get the chance to come back from a tour of duty. It's a permanent role. What are the sorts of stories and experiences that officers have come to you struggling to deal with? I mean, is this sort of attending murder scenes and seeing, you know, the worst side of humanity, really?
It can be, yeah, it can be. We've had all sorts of different things on a very wide spectrum, from just burnout from the level of work that people are experiencing and the pressures of the volume of work that they're having to deal with, right the way through to some pretty traumatic incidents that they've actually attended, and the consequences of that. And it's interesting you mentioned the PTSD, because there were some statistics a couple of years ago that came out that estimated around 1 in 5 officers are in work while experiencing symptoms of complex PTSD, which is a staggering number of individuals, really.
Oh, look, you know, you raise such good points, and I'd be fascinated to sort of know more about how the cold water and the surfing and all that actually helps, to see some case studies of that. But it's been fascinating to talk to you both this morning. James, Sam, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's amazing what goes on, what people do to help others, which is really, really, really good, really impressive.
Absolutely.
Look, we've been talking a lot about Boris Johnson and, of course, his priorities now are going to have to be cost of living. That's what the Cabinet meeting this morning is going to be about, apparently. Sue in Cheshire has been in touch. Morning, Sue, who says, why does the government give money out after taxing too much instead of tackling the problem at source? It costs money to hand money out, so it would be cheaper to leave more money in people's pockets in the first place. That's a great point, Sue. I don't know for sure, but I suspect it is actually very expensive, actually, to sort of move everyone's tax things about on an individual basis. It's a bit like these rebates that we talk about. And so why is everyone getting this rebate when it could be means tested?
Yeah.
Means testing is actually very expensive to do.
Well, remember that maybe there needs to be a sort of moral element in it all. You look to places like Australia, where you're expected not to use the health service there unless you really need it. There's sort of a shame element on it. If you go to have a baby, you're expected to pay for it yourself. Who knows if that could be a way out of all that. Look, keep your views coming in. You can see loads of them. We're out of time to read them now, but we'll try and squeeze them in the next little bit. We'll be back after this. See you in just a moment.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers. One departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast, as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon, fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland. It is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
The Prime Minister survives a vote of confidence in his leadership, vowing to deliver for Britain as he convenes Cabinet today.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 7th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Stephen. Here's what's leading the news this hour.
The Prime Minister will convene Cabinet today in an attempt to move on from last night's vote of confidence that saw 4 in 10 of his own MPs vote to remove him. Speaking after the vote, the PM hailed the result as extremely good and decisive.
Well, in response, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, called the result grotesque and said the Conservative Party had ignored the British people by keeping Boris Johnson in power.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has used his nightly address to thank the Prime Minister for providing Kyiv with exactly the weapons it needs. The UK provided the country with some long-range missile systems after Russia launched renewed strikes on the capital.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a picture of their daughter Lilibet as they celebrated her first birthday during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
We'd love to hear from you this morning. We always do. Earlier on, we're talking about Tony in Sheffield, who wants to set up beer banks as well as food banks. John says, read the beer bank comment. God bless Tony from Sheffield. Quite right, John.
It's not going to catch on.
Nothing's going to happen, but it's a nice idea. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
We've also been talking about subscriptions this morning. This is a free one. GB News is on YouTube. You can find all the latest on the big stories everyone's talking about. So our top story this morning, and the Prime Minister has survived a vote of confidence in his leadership. This was the moment.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
Well, in a speech after the vote, a defiant Boris Johnson called the result decisive and vowed to move on and deliver for Britain.
And what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, we can speak now to Greg Smith. He's a Conservative MP who voted in favour of the Prime Minister last night and joins us in the studio this morning. Very good morning to you. What do you make of the comments by Sir Keir Starmer that people who voted for the Prime Minister last night, like yourself, have ignored the British public?
Look, shock horror, Labour leader wants to get rid of a Conservative Prime Minister. We can all expect Sir Keir to go down that tack. People are upset. Trust needs to be rebuilt. I got a significant number of emails from constituents asking me to vote against the Prime Minister, but I also got a good number of constituents writing to me to say, we voted for you because we wanted Boris Johnson to be the Prime Minister of this country. So it is never as straightforward as some politicians like to place it. The important thing now is that there was a vote last night. Let's be honest, 40% is an uncomfortable number, and we now need to get into the job of rebuilding trust, and the way we do that is by finishing the job of the big things we were elected to do in 2019.
Which is levelling up, isn't it, in all of this, which is a very difficult job to do, and it's ultimately going to cost a lot of money.
Money always comes into these things, but I'm a classical liberal economist. I co-chair the Free Market Forum of Conservatives, and the way that I think we need to do that, and the Prime Minister has spoken about this in the last 24 hours, is get back onto a radical tax-cutting agenda, because we know that actually cutting taxes stimulates the economy, it gets growth going, it gives the companies out there, the entrepreneurs out there, the stability they need to reinvest their money, grow the economy, and then more money goes into the Treasury to pay for the things we want.
But he had a chance to do that. I mean, the Chancellor didn't do that in his spring statement. The Chancellor's come out with quite unconservative measures in his crisis package. Is he actually going to practice what he's preaching there? And I just wonder what it is that made you tip in favour of him, given that you had this mixture of emails coming in from your constituents, when, he's quite clearly not doing those things that you want him to do.
It's a really serious thing to depose a sitting Conservative Prime Minister, well, for any party to depose a sitting Prime Minister. And my view is that a lot of things went wrong in Downing Street. The Prime Minister has apologised for that. He has radically changed the operation in Downing Street. I don't believe that he thought he was breaking the rules at the time, although clearly a fixed penalty notice suggests he did. I want to get into the business of saying that was difficult. I get the pain that many of my constituents and people all around the country felt. Actually, me too, because I couldn't see my grandparents before they died last year. That was painful. They didn't get the funeral that they deserved, and that still hurts. But I want to get into the business of saying things went wrong. There has been a clear apology that I personally accept. I know others don't. Now let's get on with being a Conservative government by growing the economy, by giving the stability the country needs, finishing the job on Brexit, and that means fixing the protocol, and we've got the legislation coming through on that, and getting on with what we were given a mandate to do in 2019.
What about cost of living in all of this? Because one thing which is going to pull those 148 members back on side is going to be thinking that the public are behind them and they might keep their jobs at the next election. That's going to be helped a lot more if Boris Johnson was to persuade number 11 to start doing things like reducing fuel duty, cutting taxes, as you mentioned, maybe looking at the green levy. I mean, there's a lot which can be done. Should it be done?
Absolutely. I think we need to bring forward a much more radical package of economic measures. The £400 rebate, the £1,200 of support for the lowest paid 8 million households in the country, comes from the right place. It is welcome support to people who are hurting right now, but I think we do need to go further on that. And the way we can go further on that, to break away from the here is a cheque from the government mentality, would be to cut VAT on fuel. We can do that now we've left the EU. Would be to look at those green levies again, because inherent in the Chancellor's package was creating opportunities for investment for the big oil and gas companies to put their money into funding renewables, solar, offshore wind. We need nuclear as well. So now they have got those incentives to pay for that. Let's take the burden off the consumer. Let's get rid of those green levies and get that huge chunk off people's gas and electricity bills.
Yeah, policy a huge part of the battle for the Prime Minister. The other part of it, of course, is to try and unite the party, which is quite clearly split into multiple factions. And now they all know the shape of that a bit better, don't they? In the last 24 hours, the rebels have kind of identified who else is feeling a particular way towards the Prime Minister, and that presents a legislative problem, potentially.
I think the important thing to do is we've now had a vote. And just after every election, dare I say it, after every referendum, there is a result. And last night, 60% of the parliamentary party, which is a decisive margin, uncomfortable as the 40% is a decisive margin. The parliamentary party now needs to rally behind the Prime Minister, accept that result, and get on with doing the things we were elected to do. Let's not tear each other apart. Yeah, let's challenge legislation as it's coming up where we might not disagree with every word of it. The Levelling Up Bill tomorrow, I still have a couple of, I think it's a good piece of legislation, but with a couple of flaws that need amending in it. Let's have the debate on exactly how we are delivering for the British people, not about personalities.
Greg, we're out of time, but I'm being yelled at. But I just want to ask you very briefly. You've said how you voted. Other people have said... I mean, it was a secret ballot. Should it be a secret ballot? Should people be able to know how their member voted in this?
It's a difficult question, because, of course, everything else we do in Parliament, we walk through a lobby, and it's very visible how we vote on every piece of legislation, on every motion in front of us. However, I think there are certain things where, for those colleagues that want to keep it a secret, who don't want to put their head above the parapet, but just quietly say their preference, it probably is still the right way to do it. But I do get the cries for knowing how every single MP voted.
Why did you decide to go public, out of interest?
I don't particularly want to hide from what I did. I don't think there's anything to be gained from not standing up and telling my constituents and telling.
From coming out of
I don't know about that. But my motivation for coming on your show this morning and the letter that I will send to constituents that wrote to me about it later today is just to be clear and transparent about why I did what I did.
Well, I think that's quite a nice thing in politics, to be clear and transparent. We don't get enough of it. Really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Well, as the country reacts to that vote last night, the Prime Minister will now look to Wakefield, where a by-election is going to be held on June the 23rd. Yeah, there are 15 candidates standing in that by-election. They are Nadeem Ahmed for the Conservatives, Akif Akbar, who's independent, Paul Bickerdike from the Christian People's Alliance, Mick Dodgson from the Freedom Alliance, Jada Franson, an independent, and Jordan Gaskell for the UK Independence Party, David Hurdson of the Yorkshire Party, Therese Hurst from the English Democrats, and Christopher Jones from the Northern Independence Party, as well as Simon Lightwood for Labour and Jamie Needle for the Liberal Democrats. Yes, Ash Routh is standing for the Green Party, Ashley Simon from Britain First, and Sir Archibald Stanton Earl Eaton from the official Monster Raving Looney Party. And Chris Walsh from Reform UK. Yeah, so let's go to Wakefield. Anna Riley is getting reactions to the vote of confidence yesterday. Morning to you, Anna. What are people telling you?
Good morning. Yes, that by-election was sparked when former Conservative MP Imran Ahmed Khan resigned after having been convicted for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. He was given an 18-month prison sentence, and that's why he had to stand down as MP. So that's some background to us, what has caused this by-election. And some background for you as well. This West Yorkshire constituency has a Tory majority of only 3,358, having turned blue for the first time in 87 years in that 2019 election. It's known as a traditional red wall Labour seat, so it was a real win for the Conservatives here. But after speaking to people on the ground, speaking to residents and voters here, they've been telling me that they're going to vote Labour, or they're that disenfranchised with politics at the moment, they're just not going to vote at all. And this no confidence vote, Boris being backed by his Conservative majority, that has not changed anything here of what people are telling me. They're saying Partygate, they're still reeling from that, and that's it. They're either going to go with Labour or not vote at all. And that's certainly what the polls are telling us as well. There was a survey carried out by Surbiton on behalf of campaigning platform 38 Degrees, and the city had given Labour a 23-point lead over the Conservatives in the seat, and suggests Keir Starmer's party are on course to win a 56% of the vote, with the Conservatives on just 33%. So something to watch here in Wakefield as to where the vote.
You don't want to do a close-up on 7?
That's lovely. Anna, thank you very much indeed. Well, there's a lot of politics going on and a lot of news going on, so let's talk to the former Home Office Minister, Norman Baker, who's in the studio. Morning to you, Norman.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
Come on. I'm well. What do you think of all this?
Well, I look at the Daily Telegraph front page, which is a Tory party at prayer, after all, is it not the Daily Telegraph? It's this front page here, which says, hollow victory tears Tories apart. And I think the fact of the matter is that we've got the Prime Minister refusing to go. He's going to be crowbarred out of number 10, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, it's not being crowbarred
Well, he's
out.
going to have to be. I mean, but this can't go on. He's doing immense damage to the reputation of Parliament, damage to the Tory party, damage to the image of Britain abroad. And, you know, when Theresa May had a vote of confidence and actually did better than he did, you know, she was gone very shortly afterwards, didn't wait a year.
Yeah, but that was off the back of the European election results, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but I mean, nevertheless, she won a vote of confidence, but a better margin than Boris Johnson won last night, and she had to go eventually. By the way, and this is Jacob Rees-Mogg, called her result terrible, and he called it a victory for Boris Johnson last night, although the margin was less. However, there we are.
Well, you politicians are a sneaky bunch when you want to be, aren't you?
Well, I wouldn't classify myself as that anymore. I'm an ex-politician. I'm a neutral observer these days.
Yes.
But what I would say is that, you know, this is generally doing immense damage to the country. It needs to be sorted out. And the whole of the government machinery has been driven to protect one man. It's not concentrating on the cost of living, not concentrating on other issues. This is what it's about, keeping Boris Johnson in power.
Isn't this good for potentially good for all of us, though, in the sense that he's got to win those people back? He needs to do that by reasserting stronger Conservative values. It's going to mean tax cuts, probably. It's going to mean perhaps a real look at the cost of living. We could see some real carrot and not just stick now.
Well, you know, the fact of the matter is that the ship of state has been swaying around in all directions as he responds to one group of Tory MPs after another. There's no coherence. Nobody knows what the Tory party stands for at the moment. It's all over the place. So he will do whatever he has to do to get through the next 24 hours. I have a plea to Tory MPs, if I can mangle a phrase, get Boris exit done.
But they're not going to... Wouldn't that be more...
I mean, he's free for another year now. I mean, he's safe for another year. And, you know, lots of people will say... You would say that, Norman, you know, given your political affiliations.
No, well, of course, that's an accusation made. But let me just say, I was in the Home Office with Theresa May for over a year. I didn't think she was very good. I didn't agree with her on a lot of things. We had a difficult time together. I never doubted her honesty and her integrity. And actually, I would have voted for her, had I been a Tory, for the leadership. She did what she thought was best for the country. I don't think this man does.
Interesting. I mean, it's an interesting perspective. You've got to say, if they did get rid of Boris now, though, that's the party finish for the next general election, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, being neutral, I'm trying to be neutral on this. I actually think the party is not going to win the election with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. And I think you'll see in Wakefield, you've had that report just now, they're going to lose Wakefield. They're going to lose Tiverton and Honiton to Lib Dem.
But, I mean, Margaret Thatcher lost by-election after by-election, as Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying, and then went on to win an election with a resounding majority shortly after that. I mean, by-elections, particularly at this point in the electoral cycle, often don't go in favour of the sitting Prime Minister.
Well, that's true, except that I think the scale of defeat in places like Cheshire and Amersham and North Shropshire is unprecedented. If they want to put all their money on one particular roll of the dice, that's up to them. But if I were a Tory, I'd be wanting to change Prime Minister.
Do you think the Conservative Party then should take lessons from the Liberal Democrats? Because when you want to get rid of a leader, you don't mess about. I mean, you're brutal. The Lib Dems are brutal when it comes to pulling the leaders out of the seat.
We are to some extent because, I mean, ultimately we're running a political party in a proper machine. And I was very fond of Charles Kennedy, but in the end, because of his health situation, he couldn't carry on, and we had to make that clear to him.
OK, Norman, we are at a... there's nothing better... I've said this to you before, but talking to a politician who's no longer a politician, because you get a much clearer view from you. How restrained do you feel when you're in, and you've got to follow the party line and everything else? How difficult is it when you talk to people like us? Because you can't say what you actually think, can you?
Well, I did to a large extent. That's why I was called a maverick MP, because I used to do that. And even when I was in the coalition, having to defend policies that I didn't agree with on things like question time or any questions, I would use the phrase, the Prime Minister made it clear he believes this.
Yes.
I would do that.
Get out of jail with that one.
You may say that, but I couldn't possibly comment.
That sort of line. But
lovely. Norman, thank you. Good to see you, as always.
With the time at 9:18, we're going to bring you up to date on the latest headlines. As we've just been discussing, the Prime Minister is meeting his cabinet this morning as he seeks to move past the confidence vote. Speaking to reporters this morning, Conservative MP Andrea Leadsom wouldn't commit to saying whether Boris Johnson is the right person to lead the party into the next election.
The party gave its views yesterday, and today is another day we move on, and I know the Prime Minister will want to focus on absolutely the priorities of this country.
So he's the right man to lead the party into the next election?
That's it, thanks.
President Zelensky has thanked Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to protect the lives of its people. This as Russia continues to drive to capture the largest remaining Ukrainian-held city in Luhansk. Mr. Zelensky says despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have released this lovely photo of their daughter Lilibet at her first birthday party. The toddler is pictured at a picnic in the garden of the family's Windsor residence.
Queen of Showbiz, Stephanie Tetchy, is going to be here in a couple of minutes, and we'll tell you who spent £50,000 on a curry.
Only in the Showbiz. See you in a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Oh, my favourite person ever, possibly.
All right,
I'm sorry.
steady on.
I know, but you know, we have a lovely time on the weekend, don't we, Stephanie?
Yeah, we do.
Stephanie Ted, she's my
weekdays.
my personal queen of showbiz.
Shall I get a taxi?
Yeah, go on. Morning, darling.
Good morning, Isabel and Stephen.
Let's have a bit of Lilibet to start with, should we?
Oh my gosh, how adorable is that picture? I've been staring at it all morning, and this is the second official picture we've had of Lilibet. The first time Harry and Meghan released one was at Christmas, before Christmas Day. So this is her on her first birthday, which they celebrated at Frogmore Cottage. It was a very relaxed affair, and she had her cousins there. So they invited Mike Tyndall and Zara Phillips, 3 kids there. So it was quite a very special, relaxed occasion, and one that I'm sure she'll remember for a very long time when she's older.
Yeah, and those who are listening on the radio, it was the first time really to see how much she looks like her daddy, with the red hair.
Isn't she?
And she's got the most beautiful, ethereal sort of white bow in her hair and a very floaty sort of boho baby blue dress. She looks delightful.
She is the spitting image of Harry.
She is.
Online, I've been seeing some pictures of Harry at that age, and they just look identical.
Oh, it's very, very sweet, I have to say. Now, let's talk money. Wonga. Johnny Depp's been splashing out.
Well, obviously, Johnny Depp's got a lot of money anyway, but now that he's won the defamation case against Amber as well, he's been splashing out in the UK, where he's been on tour with Jeff Beck, but they actually went to visit a curry house in Birmingham, where they celebrated.
Best place for a curry.
Guys, the max I think anyone would spend in a curry house would be £1,000, but he spent...
That sounds expensive.
Maybe on a good night. But
I want to go out with you.
But he's actually spent £50,000. £50,000, him and Beck. I don't know what they ordered.
That's got to be on Bubbly or something.
Definitely, but even that, is that more? Like, they probably had about 5 or 6 people there, but the restaurant are quite happy that they've made that money from Johnny Depp.
He must be delighted.
He is.
Must have been a very big tip.
I know, it must have been a big celebration. He has been out and about since he won the case, so who knows? Another restaurant might be lucky to get his service soon.
Yeah, I don't know about vintage champagne in a Birmingham curry house. If it's like a Balti house...
Yeah, but what else are you going to spend 50 grand on? Naan bread? I mean, it doesn't cost that much.
I could try to eat my way through 50
So could I, probably, but...
And it's not like it's a Michelin-starred restaurant as well, so I can...
Maybe it was just a big tip. Big tip. He liked the staff and the service.
Oh, love it.
Can we talk about Katie Price? She's in big trouble, isn't she? She's back in court tomorrow.
Gosh, I always say that Katie Price is the cat with 9 lives when it comes to avoiding justice and avoiding the system. So she's going to be back in court tomorrow because apparently she owes £3.2 million of unpaid debt.
Oh, really?
At the moment, she's currently in trouble because she breached restraining orders against her ex-husband, Kieran Hayner. So she could be facing a jail sentence for that alone. So this might even get her behind bars much quicker.
Yeah, she has been warned she may face jail time, hasn't she, for that breach of the order?
She has, but I just find that Katie always manages to wiggle the system and she manages to get away with it. And it's been case after case. If it's not drink driving, it's harassment, and now it's debt. And she was declared bankrupt in 2019. So the courts are quite interested to find out how is she still keeping up with this luxury lifestyle that she appears to put out there when she's bankrupt and she owns all this money.
I don't know, it's a funny one.
There's quite often a lot of public support for her, in spite of all of those things that you described. But, yeah, troubled person nonetheless. Stephanie, thank you for all of that.
Thank you, always a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see you again very soon.
Yeah, that is it from us for today. But Tom Harwood is up next. He's got the briefing with the very latest, and of course, all the political turmoil and strife currently around the Conservative Party.
That's after your forecast. See you tomorrow.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fresh start out there for many of us, but where we've got the lowest temperatures, that's where we've got the best of the sunny spells. It's not sunny everywhere. There are some areas of cloud and some showers. One departing from the south coast this morning, another one moving in from the North Sea to affect parts of northern England, southern Scotland. Nothing particularly soggy out there, just a few showers for the English Channel coast, as well as the North Sea coast, and this area of cloud and outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle drifts into northern England and southern Scotland by the afternoon before petering out. Otherwise, sunny spells developing in many places, particularly the southern half of the UK and the north and west of Scotland, where we do get those sunny spells developing and temperatures reaching the low 20s. A few showers are possible, Northwest Highlands, for example, and across central and southern parts of England. But away from the showers, for many, it's a fine day, albeit with largely cloudy skies persisting for northern England, southern Scotland. By the end of the day, however, another area of rain and showers moves in from the Atlantic, and that affects much of England and Wales overnight before slowly coming to a rest across Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland, as well as northern England. A damp start to the day in these places, but for England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, 13 or 14 Celsius, so not quite as cool. And for the north of Scotland, that's where the lowest temperatures will be, but that's where the brightest skies will remain throughout tomorrow. Now, the rain that becomes slow-moving across central and southern Scotland turns to showers by the afternoon, fairly widely, I think, away from the north of Scotland. It is a showery day. The showers will be slow-moving for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a lot of rainfall in a short space of time in some locations where the showers persist. But they'll be moved on with a keen breeze in the southern half of the UK. Thursday, especially later in the day, as well as Friday, the weather turns unseasonably windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting